All set?
Yeah, okay. All right, it's 6:35 on Thursday, December 19th, 2013, and this is a hearing of the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals on the application of Gwen and Greg Traynor for a variance from the requirements of Section 4A of the zoning bylaw and other relief as necessary to construct a detached two-car garage approximately 33.5 feet by 23 feet in size, 11 feet from the side property line where 20 feet is required, at 9 Tower Road in Residence District B. We received a request from the applicant to continue this hearing to January 15th. Do we have a time for that, I guess, or is that on our agenda here?
No, it's up in the air. We
Okay.
haven't assigned anything. We could go at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, sure.
And do we have a similar agreement to extend the deadline for issuing the variance opinion?
No, but we're well within our time frame.
Right,
So,
right.
If you open that up.
The deadline date is not until February 7th.
And we're continuing until?
The 15th, January 15th. I
Um,
think we could probably ask them at that point.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so is that a motion?
Yeah, so I move that we
That's a
accept
motion.
the applicant's request to continue their hearing until the 15th of January.
I'll second that.
Second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. We're gonna try and winnow down the pile here as we go. Okay, now, next matter, 6:37-ish PM on Thursday, December 19th, 2013. It's an application of, it's a hearing of the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals on the application of Michael and Jennifer Columbus for a variance from the requirements of Section 4A of the zoning bylaw and other relief is necessary to replace a non-conforming single-car garage and breezeway with a two-story addition, including a single-car garage and approximately 1,200 square feet of living space at 5 Stoddard Road. Proposed addition would extend and maintain the existing non-conforming front yard setback of 21.7 feet where 25 feet is required, and side yard setback of 7.3 feet where 15 feet is required in Residence District A. And, Councilor.
Good evening. My name is Dan Brewer. I represent Mike and Jennifer Columbus, who are here. Also here is John Tiriaki, the architect for this project. This was first brought to the board as an application for a variance. I believe that there is a basis for the board to conclude that this matter can proceed as of right under the provisions of the existing bylaw. And I've addressed that in my supplemental statement that's been filed with the board. I'd like to address that as an initial matter. The zoning bylaw defines a single-family dwelling as to include attached garages, whether heated or unheated, connected to the primary structure. And this structure was built in 1939 with a garage attached to the structure with an enclosed breezeway. And the enclosed breezeway was capped with a fixed solid roof that was an integral part of the roof structure for the main dwelling and the garage. It was clearly at that point in time an attached garage. At some point, and the assessor's records, which were attached to the supplemental statement, show that the footprint recognized by the assessors for assessment purposes shows the footprint of the breezeway now as part of the first floor area. At some point, it is true that the breezeway was opened up, but the roof was never modified. In my view, it seems pretty clear that there is a basis to conclude that the garage remains an attached garage to the structure. The garage is fully enclosed. I don't believe it's heated, but I don't think that matters under the bylaw. We then take a look at the provisions of Section 3I2, which states that for the purposes of this Section 3I, this project won't be considered an extension of a non-conforming use where it's conforming in all respect to the zoning bylaw in existence at the time of its initial construction, and the alteration will not further reduce the minimum linear measurements of existing non-conforming dimensions. The structure and the attached garage were built according to the assessor's records in 1939, so so we satisfy the first condition. And we are not going to affect the minimum linear measurements either from the front or the side in any respect. I pointed out parenthetically in my materials that there is going to be a projection from the front of the garage in the form of an E, but I believe that the language of the projection provision in the bylaw makes it clear that that's is a permitted projection as of right. So I would argue that this is a matter that should be allowed to proceed as of right, and I would request that the building commissioner be so instructed by the zoning board of appeals that based upon a fair reading of the plain language of the zoning bylaw, the provisions that apply, that this matter be allowed to proceed. And there is a question of timing here. This is something that the project proponent wishes to proceed with in a timely fashion. If there is a decision that requires a written decision with a 20-day waiting period, we're looking at a construction start that would be delayed until the end of January. I believe, I'll address if necessary, that there is ample basis for a variance in this case. But the variance would require a written decision, a 20-day waiting period, and we would lose significant time and the project would be delayed. Accordingly, I'm requesting that this board first address the question of whether this can proceed as a matter of right. Under my view, the zoning bylaw allows it to do so because we're dealing with a prior non-conforming structure which is defined to include this garage as an attached garage, and we are not affecting the minimum linear measurements from the side yard or the front yard.
What would have to be done to make the garage unattached, in your view?
I believe it would require removing the roof that connects it, the entire breezeway. I know that there has been some inconsistency in the treatment of breezeways connecting garages to structures, but given the history of this property, given that it was first constructed as an enclosed breezeway, given the assessors assessed this on the basis of the footprint of the breezeway being part of the first floor, given that the structural integrity of the roof connecting the roof of the garage to the roof of the main structure has not been disturbed. Given all of those factors, I believe that there's more than enough basis for this board to conclude that this falls within the definition of an attached garage within the definition of single-family structure for the purposes of the bylaw. And I believe the facts are sufficiently specific to this case so that it doesn't generate a negative precedent for the board.
It's on the plans.
If you look at the assessor's record attached to Exhibit E to my materials, you can see that the gross floor area does include, for the first floor, does include that breezeway section connecting the main structure to the garage. It's on page 2 of that exhibit.
Could I see a copy of the bylaw?
Yeah.
Just for some- Excuse us while we were
Certainly.
going through all this material here, so.
All right.
What do you think?
I don't think it, or should it matter that the once enclosed breezeway is no longer enclosed? I don't think so. I'm just
I don't
asking
think
the
so.
question.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I don't think it does.
Oh. Guess that's how it's.
Is that yours?
I think I grabbed it from you.
That's this one. Sure that gets in there.
There's a case on this.
Was there a recent case in there? I mean, it makes sense that it was part of the structure.
Yeah, I mean,
The
I,
timing was good. It's,
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's
a hatchet. So-
Yeah.
something, there was an old case, 1949 Olson versus zoning board of appeal of Attleboro, which I think is on point, saying that it is part of the structure.
Yeah.
I would certainly agree with that.
Yeah, because I remember reading this. Yeah, so
I'm okay with the argument. Yep.
64 years of legal precedent, who are we to argue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
bear with me. I'm fine with it.
Okay. So I think we'd agree with your supposition that this could be permitted as a right of a building permit, so.
So the procedure, I think, would be, you would need to withdraw your variance request without prejudice, otherwise it'd be deemed approved if we didn't act on it.
Right.
And we would issue a decision
Or fine, yeah.
or a finding.
A finding to the building commissioner?
Yeah.
Fine.
Now, are there, it's as of right, but that means that it's going to be built in accordance with the plans that you've presented to the
Yes,
board?
absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, that's why we're here.
Yep.
Very well, if you would allow me to withdraw without prejudice
Mhm.
the application of the petitions for variance.
You'll need to put that in writing.
Put that in writing for us, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can do that after we conclude.
Very well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So,
So, I guess, as is our practice, we have always accepted requests for withdrawals without prejudice, so.
yep. So then, I guess I would move that we find that the applicant's proposal does not constitute an impermissible extension of a legal prior non-conforming single-family dwelling, but is allowed as of right pursuant to section 3I2B and section 4 of the bylaw, and that we accept the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice its variance request.
I'll second that.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Welcome.
Okay, let's, okay,
Good.
seven.
No, I think we have time. 7 or?
Alrighty, it's 7:32 PM on Thursday, December 19th, 2013, and this is a continuation of a hearing before the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals on the application of Paul LeBlanc as the petitioner for finding under MGL Chapter 48, Section 6, and/or lot area and side yard setback variances for 4A in the zoning bylaw, and such other relief as necessary to divide the property at 613 Main Street in Residence District A. The resulting parcel A, consisting of 2,997 square feet and containing an existing barn, would be combined with adjacent property at 605 Main Street. The remaining 5,822 square foot lot at 613 Main Street would continue to serve an existing mixed-use building, retail use with residential units above, or a unit above. We've got a request from the petitioner for an additional continuance on this. And we've scheduled January 15th at 7:30 PM for that continuance.
So I move that we accept the applicant's request for a continuance to January 15th at 7:30.
I'll second that. Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. And we can open up on the cemetery, so.
Oh, need 2 minutes.
No,
Oh, we have to wait?
It's at 7:30. 7:35.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yep.
7:30. Don't mind the pile of papers. Right. No. Exactly. Okay. Just the next paper. Just have this paper. No, it's okay. It's 7:34 PM on Thursday, December 19th, 2013. And this is a continuation of a hearing before the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals on the application of the Hingham Cemetery Corporation for variances from the requirements of Section 4A, 4B, Paragraph 5, and 4C, Paragraph 2 of the zoning bylaw. Another relief is necessary to locate a prefabricated 12-foot by 20-foot storage shed within 40 feet of the property line at 40 Water Street in the official and open space district. And Councilor, last time we met, we were talking about getting a little more information on the plan to better locate
That's correct.
the location.
Since we met, we have submitted to you a couple of additional documents. The first is a 3-page submittal, which is a copy of the interment plot plans for the cemetery. The first page shows the entirety of the cemetery. The second page shows a larger scale, close-in version showing the storage yard at the northerly portion of the cemetery adjacent to Section H, and the final page shows a much larger scale version of that same map with the maintenance area shown. We have also submitted to you a site plan prepared by Kevin, our consultant, that shows the existing stockade fencing and maintenance compound and the location of the proposed 20 by 12 storage shed. It will be inside the 40-foot setback that applies to efficient and open space. It also shows that there is a 20-foot setback for green space that applies to this district as well, that we'll also see a variance from. And in addition, it's filed with the boards today copies of photographs. The first is a photo taken from the town's own website, the town's own database, showing an overhead of the storage yard. The second is from the Bing Maps database, which is more current, that shows the same location with the finished Station Street parking lot and the Greenbush Railroad line, and then on the top right, it puts that in the context of the overall area. The next two photos, the next photo taken January 1st, 2004, is the interior of the storage shed, relatively shortly after the fence was put up. And we would propose to put the storage shed up against the far stockade fence. And the final photograph is taken from section H, which is the Water Street portion of the cemetery, showing the exterior of the stockade fence. So I believe this provides additional information allowing the zoning board to understand more clearly the topography of the situation, the location of the proposed structure, and supports the proposed findings in my earlier submittal that locating this shed as proposed is really the only place where we can practically put it. It is hidden from view. It will not impact any neighbors visually. It will not derogate from the intent of the zoning bylaw. It will not negatively affect the public interest. And it's something that will promote in a material way the ability of the cemetery to continue to maintain what is in fact a real asset of the town.
If you'll excuse me for a second. Folks, I just want to mention, we're not going to start without you. We're trying to finish up a hearing here, so I'd appreciate some quiet, and if we need to bring in more chairs, we can bring in more chairs. Don't worry, we won't start till everyone's settled, so if we could just have some patience while we finish this up. Thanks. Okay.
So I would ask that the variance be granted allowing the location of the storage shed within the 40-foot setback and straddling the 20-foot setback that would otherwise apply to this property in the open space district.
The official open space setback, was that referenced in one of these sections, is it? I believe?
Yes. It's 40 feet for accessory structures. And there's a 20-foot green space perimeter that's required for properties located in Roanoke district as well.
Okay, it's 45, sorry.
And how far will you encroach into the 20-foot setback?
It's shown on the Cavanaro plan, precisely, it's approximately 10 feet, I think.
No, I think into the 20-foot setback,
Into the 20-foot, it's
it's only 2 feet.
2 feet, okay.
right, 2 feet, 18
Right.
feet from the property line. Okay.
And
Well, as part of this application, we're also requesting that the existence of the storage shed in the 20-foot setback be recognized and allowed.
Okay, so we are fully within the 40-foot setback, and we encroach 2 feet into the 20-foot setback.
That's correct. And again, the maintenance of this area is an important part of the cemetery operations. And as you can see from the materials recently submitted, the location of this area is really the only location possible in the cemetery property for maintenance of a service yard like this. And it does not negatively impact any of the others.
Right.
And it's not inconsistent with the general purpose of the zoning bylaw.
Okay. And just remind the board what will be stored in the shed?
Stored in the shed will be various pieces of equipment that the superintendent uses to maintain the grounds, lawn mowers, blowers, similar equipment.
so, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think our discussion last time, I think we agreed that this is probably an appropriate location.
Yeah, we just wanted
We just wanted some more
the coordinates. of the-
precision or
Yeah.
indications of exactly where it is
Okay.
for the record, so.
I think what the applicant submitted provides us with that.
Correct. All agreement? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we can make the findings that we need to make here for the variance. I think we discussed those in the previous hearing and a little bit more here. And certainly, there are unique circumstances as to the shape of this lot and the topography. I mean, there's very little space, given the size of the cemetery, to locate this structure. And this appears to be an appropriate place, right next to the rail line, the Greenbush line, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, do you have language? I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
And excuse me, just for clarification, we're also asking for confirmation of the continuation of the service yard within a 20-foot setback that would otherwise apply.
Would you say that one more time?
Yes, there's a 20-foot setback that
Right.
applies to personal open space. It
Right.
requires the maintenance of the 20-foot green perimeter.
Right.
This storage yard arguably is inconsistent with that. We're asking for a variance to allow for the continuation of the service yard, notwithstanding the 20-foot perimeter requirement that would otherwise apply.
Okay.
So we're asking for two things, the variance for the storage shed and a variance for the continuation of the storage yard.
Okay, a variance for the continuation.
That's a use variance.
That would be a use variance, yeah.
Okay.
Which is a different animal entirely. We certainly talked about the dimensional variance.
Right. Was that requested, Counselor?
It's referred to in the submittal on page
4A, 5E5, others located.
page 2, the last paragraph before the proposed requested findings.
Would it not be an
Let's-
accessory use to the cemetery?
I was going to argue that it is. But we wanted to make sure for record purposes that there was no misunderstanding about the continuation of the storage yard in this 20-foot setback area.
Do you know how long it's been located there?
It's been located since at least 2004.
Right.
And I believe some area of, that area was devoted to that purpose less formally before the renovation of the English line. We've always had some area, some of that area devoted to support of our maintenance operations.
Right, correct. It's 4B5.
4B5?
Right, yeah. Yep. 4C2, which is the location of accessory buildings. So it's really the use of the yard space, the green space.
All right, so that gets the use variance 4B5?
Right. That's what I would think. Yep. Is that your?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can I just see that?
Sure. Certainly for use variance, the findings are the same. So, shape, soil conditions, topography, et cetera, of the line that are not common within the district. That's interesting. Official and open space district, the boundaries of the district in this case are the cemetery, no, the boundaries of the district itself. Is just the cemetery?
I think it's a little bit larger. I think it encompasses Station Street as well. But
Take a look at that.
All right, so your argument is that the shed and this service area is an accessory use to the cemetery?
that's correct.
And that you want to be able to continue that accessory use within the green yard space that has the 20-foot setback dimension?
That's correct.
Okay. Why is that not a dimensional
It does
variance?
go across Station Street.
If it's an accessory use, I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's an accessory use in the district that's permitted. Is it a use variance that is that for, or is it a dimensional variance into the green space?
I would think it would be a dimensional.
Yeah, I'm just, so if we were to agree that this use, this
Correct.
service use,
Yep.
is accessory to the cemetery, then the use is permitted, so we don't need a use variance.
Correct.
It's a question of location.
Exactly.
which would be
So
dimensional.
it would be a dimensional variance.
Is that,
But the use is not permitted with that location.
As an accessory to the primary use of the property, I would argue that it is. It's certainly necessary to the operation of the cemetery.
if it's accessory use, is it permitted, it's permitted except not in a certain portion of the cemetery, which is a setback. So that's what I'm thinking, is the analogy here dimensional?
Yeah.
Well, I may seem to be asking a random member of the audience, he's actually our esteemed zoning board member and a crack attorney at this stuff, so.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I actually only want your comment right now.
Did you hear me? No.
Yeah, yeah. This is new ground for us, so we just want to make sure that we're,
We want to get it right this time.
yeah.
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 Well, it certainly seems like it would be an accessory use.
If it's accessory, then to me, the analogy is dimensional, but.
Maintenance of the, maintenance of the cemetery is certainly part of cemetery operations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's significant amounts of open space within the cemetery itself, in addition to the green space requirement.
Right. So we're encroaching 2 feet into the green yard setback area.
Right.
By
For
the
the
structure.
storage shed.
By the structure, that's right.
But
By the structure.
Maintenance
But the maintenance compound-
extends all the way to the property line, maybe?
So
Yes.
you're
Yes.
extending the use into an area which is not.
Well, the use
not
is
otherwise.
be allowed on the whole property, the cemetery
So
use,
then why are you looking for the variance?
because it's in the green.
Because our use of the location of the storage area
I'm fine with that.
encroaches into the 20-foot
Right.
green space perimeter.
Right.
And we wanted to be sure that we were clear that that was an allowable use of that portion of the land. So I would say that it is a dimensional variance. It's,
You're not looking for use beyond that, beyond the structure?
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we, so,
Okay.
all right, so,
Okay, I thought you were going beyond that.
all right,
No,
so,
no.
Okay.
so because it's an accessory use, we're really looking at a dimensional variance.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I feel we,
You should ask.
yeah, I should just say,
Yes,
is
ask
there
the
anyone
que-
in the audience who cares to comment on this application?
Just as an abutter, I found the applicant to be a wonderful neighbor, and I would support this application.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
A very quiet neighbor?
Lots of quiet neighbors.
Okay. So we can make the findings that are necessary. That's our feeling.
Yes.
Yes. So I make a motion that, yep, that we act favorably on the application of Hingham Cemetery Corp. For variances from the requirements of Section 4A, Section 5B5, and Section 4C2 of the zoning bylaw, and other relief as necessary to locate a prefabricated 12 by 20-foot storage shed within 40 feet of the property line at 40 Water Street in the official and open space district, including having the shed be within 18 feet of the property line as depicted on the proposed building plan by Cavanaro Consulting. And
And the shed to be used for purposes of the storage.
and the shed to be used for the purposes cited in the application and the representations made at this hearing.
Well, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, we got seats in the front if people want to come in. Do we need more?
Have a nice holiday.
Thanks. Good to see you, Robert. It's like a service area.
Right, but are they, right.
Just
I
you,
thought they
I
were looking
guess.
for permission on that, and that's, That is a use variance. That's not the structure improvement, that's the use going into the area where it shouldn't be done. But then he said it's just the structure.
Well, the maintenance yard includes that area there, but
How you doing?
He's okay, he's just traveling tonight now.
I'm gonna get some water.
Bill, how are you?
so Bill, I guess we'll, you guys are doing site plan review, probably not tonight, huh? All right, so I guess this is our baby, we'll just open her up, they'll do the presentation.
And you can, like I said to you, because you guys have the heavy lifting here,
Yeah.
you can move the witnesses along and run the meeting.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of your baby. We'll just help out if we can.
Okay. You certainly move those chairs.
He turned the heat down, that was cool.
Yeah.
But it'll keep us awake.
Yes, thank you very much, it will.
Did you talk to me about dates? Or not? Okay, so, no, extending the shot, extending.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of puts it in
And is he in
perspective.
agreement to that?
How really strict.
No, that, it was 29 days we've been at it.
Oh, no, we've not discussed consent to
Okay.
So we need to cover that.
Right, we need to cover that too.
This is under Mass State.
48 is the zoning act, it's section 3.
We want to move those chairs over here or something? Okay.
Feels like someone opened a window.
Really?
But that's not what this is, though.
It's an intended structure, though. I think that was, I think the cell tower hanging kind of fall in application 48.
Okay, let's get this show on the road. What do you think, yeah?
Make sure that's planning board in?
It says, federally licensed.
That's already?
I don't know, maybe not.
I don't know.
That's the only thing that addresses intended structure.
Well, because when was, does it say when that was put in?
1995.
Did that precede the Federal Telecommunications Act?
Yes,
Are we,
definitely. Yes.
So maybe it's not
Already here?
referring to cell towers.
yeah?
I don't know. It's a question. I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay.
You should help him too.
Yep. Okay, I think we'll get started here. Thank you for coming. A few ground rules, I guess, before we officially open the hearing. Obviously, a lot of interest on this application. It's been our practice to always hear from everyone and anyone who has an issue or a question or a comment that they want to make. We'll do that. We may not do it all tonight, because we'll probably be back here for a second night at a point sometime in the future. But we will do that. There's been a couple of requests that have come into the office over the past few weeks. One in particular about swearing in witnesses and it's things of that nature. It hasn't been our practice in the past to do that. We're not going to start with this application tonight. Rest assured, though, that we will, as I said, hear each and every one who wants to speak on this. Recording will be made of this hearing. We will keep detailed minutes, so there will be a written and oral record or recorded record of all the proceedings. Okay? One final thing. There's a microphone there. We are being recorded. You're on TV. You're on cable TV. Hope everybody got spiffed up. So, speak up, please. I have a tendency to mumble. If you can't hear me, please nicely tell me to speak up, and we will do that. I just wanted to get that on the record or on the floor before we open here. So we will do that now. So it is 7:56 p.m. on Thursday, December 19th, 2013, and this is the hearing before the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals on the application of Global Tower Assets LLC and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, the petitioners, for a use variance from Section 5E, Paragraph 4, dimensional variance from the setback requirements of Section 5E, Paragraph 7D, and a special permit A2 under Section 5E, along with a waiver of the 100-foot maximum height requirement under Section 5E, Paragraph 7C of the zoning bylaw, and such other relief as necessary to construct a multi-user personal wireless services facility consisting of a 120-foot cell tower on land of Anchor Plaza Realty Trust located at 207 to 225 Lincoln Street in Residence District A. The ad goes on to say the petitioners will conduct a crane test, which was done, to depict the visual impact of the proposed facility. That was done November 9th, Saturday, November 9th, from 9 a.m. till approximately 4 p.m. So what we'll do is we'll open the hearing to a presentation by the petitioners. The board will get a chance to ask questions of the petitioners. We have a radio frequency engineer that's been retained by the board to advise us on that. He is not here this evening, but we do have reports from him. Oh, he is here?
He's right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't introduced.
No.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So he is here. So we will get the benefit of his expertise as well. The planning board is sitting in with us this evening. They will be doing site plan review along with this application. May not get to that portion of the hearing this evening, but they will be here, so. And we will get, as I said, an opportunity for everyone who wants to speak to do so.
But they should open.
Yep.
But
And,
we should open, right?
And this meeting of the planning board is open in the matter of Global Tower Assets LLC and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, 207-225 Lincoln Street, to conduct site plan review in connection with a special permit A2 to construct a multi-user personnel wireless service facility consisting of a 120-foot cell tower on land of Anchor Plaza Realty Trust.
Okay. Who's here for the petitioner?
Before the presentation, we should get the timing issues in terms of, yeah.
Before we begin,
Yeah, if you don't mind, one of the things I think from a procedural standpoint
right.
we should confirm is the timing, because you're here on various applications. There's the local town bylaw, there's the federal shot clock that applies. There was a request by the applicant to delay the opening in order to get certain things done. I want to make sure that we're all on the same calendar so that we know what goal we are all working towards at the end. And I was going to suggest two things. That first, to the extent that there are various local times applicable, that we consolidate them all and we just do the federal shot clock so that we know exactly what that deadline is. In this case, it's 150 days from the date that the application was filed. And then second, there was a request that we actually delay these proceedings for 29 days. We originally were scheduled for hearing on November 20th, and there was a request that we got to continue it, to not open then, but to open today. And part of that request was that there would be comparable extensions granted, and so I just think we should confirm the dates, so we say this is the deadline that we're now working towards, and if there's any other issues or anyone else requests a continuance, we'll deal with it later, but at least we've got a firm deadline today. Is that acceptable?
Yes, it is. My name is Earl Wall, and I represent the applicants. That is acceptable.
So what is, the original shot clock date is
February 28th.
And if you add 29 days to that, what does that come to?
Should be March 27th, but that's a guess.
No, March 29th.
Leap year.
March 29th?
Well, we said February 28th?
February-
28th? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we had 29 days, you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
So
March
it-
29th.
Right, so,
You haven't helped them out.
right, so this,
So you're saying from the date of application
It's not from the date of
completion?
application, it's when it's deemed complete. When
Okay.
you deem this application is complete for your review, the 150, listen, I'm not an attorney.
No, no, no,
I've done
no.
enough of these.
Right, but there's a-
I look at the FCC rules.
Right.
Yep.
So you've got the 150 days from the time that you've deemed the application complete, ready to go.
but isn't there,
In terms of notifying the applicant when it was complete, so,
Right.
you know, we have
Mhm.
particular submittal requirements they've provided. There's questions about the adequacy, I think, of a lot of those submittal requirements.
Mhm.
In particular, our civil peer review. Engineer raised a number of issues within the first 30 days that we would have, you know, so we notified you of those deficiencies. Unfortunately, our peer review, because we had a hard time tracking down somebody qualified to review the plans, it was reviewed very, very quickly, it was just outside, I think, for 30 days.
Mhm.
So,
what did you say the
I mean,
date was,
it's-
March what?
Be
it's
March
up to the
29th.
board whether or not, I guess, the application is deemed
That's 29 days
complete.
from the 28th.
So,
We do.
I think then the safest route is putting aside the completion date, assuming that
That's a Saturday.
whether or not that's an issue or not, the minimum would be March 29th, and if it turns out there's a completion issue, we can talk about whether or not it should be extended, but at least we have a baseline set. So
But one issue is March 29th is a Saturday, so I think that would roll over to the Monday.
It would be the
Being
next business day, which is.
31st, March 31st. Right.
Okay, so,
Okay.
so March 31st. And then we were also, again, rolling the dates because there are different completion dates for special permits, for variances, and we're just going to do everything as following the federal shot clock, if that's acceptable.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Makes it
great.
simple.
Yes. So, and Emily will give you something that we'll just sign off on to make that clear. Okay. Great.
And Mr. Fisher, the planning board would also require a request for extension with the same timeframes written. if-
Right,
if
so,
that's the intent.
my intention was that all of the local boards, the zoning board and planning board, that time would be pushed back to March 31st at this point. And that, I think that's their understanding.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. So, let's get on with it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Earl Duvall, and I represent the applicants Global Tower and AT&T. I'd like to first start, and I think it's very important for me to introduce the members of our team that are here tonight and available to answer questions and to present. Along with me is my colleague, Attorney Elizabeth Thompson. The project engineer from Proterra Design Group, Jesse Marino. Doug Shadell, sound specialist. Dr. Don Hayes, radiation safety specialist. Am I forgetting here? Shane Eagleson, who's the radio frequency engineer for AT&T, and Jackie Swenson from KJK Wireless on behalf of AT&T. Very important for me to start by saying the reason that we're here is because AT&T has a significant gap in its coverage. We would not be here but for that reason. Global Tower and AT&T has retained this team to go out to the search ring to review all the sites, all the candidates, all the locations in which we might be able to, or AT&T might be able to close the gap in coverage. We've looked at all the existing structures in the area. We've looked at all the tall buildings. We've looked at all the raw land sites. We've not been able to find any other reasonable, feasible alternative sites, but this site. AT&T has a gap in coverage in this area, and we're working to close that gap. I've had the good fortune of presenting before zoning boards and planning boards for almost 20 years, working with most of the tower companies and most of the carriers. And I can represent that this team, as well as all the teams that I've worked with, does its best job at responsible siting. Global Tower, AT&T, wants to be a good neighbor. They want to do responsible siting. The various members that we have tonight on the team are here to answer questions with regards to radio frequency, the alternative site analysis with regards to all the candidates that we've looked at, and the specific reasons as to why those candidates have been rejected. Dr. Hayes is here to answer any questions with regards to radio frequency. Doug Shadell with regards to any concerns regarding noise. I think the best thing for us, and it was my understanding that tonight, based upon the fact that the town's retained expert is here, that we're going to be speaking a lot about with regards to the significant gap in coverage and what that means and what the information is that's been submitted on behalf of the applicant. But before we get into that, I think it would be very helpful to the board and to the audience for our project engineer to give a brief overview of the site. So Jesse?
Sure, yeah.
Before we get into this, could I just ask you if you have a sort of an estimate of how long the presentation is going to be? Because we just want to try and get a feel for the timing here, so.
I thought what it is that we would do
Okay.
is, I think Jesse might go for 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
And then again, I thought the focus would be to hear from the town's experts.
Sure.
And be able to answer questions.
Right.
Right, so we can't see, it would be maybe better
Yeah.
to put it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the board would.
We can't see what
We
he's
can't
about to
see
do.
the easel. Maybe perhaps if we put it there, everyone over there could see it and.
If we put it here, can you see it? Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna move it back so you can see it.
I think you've seen it already. Okay, thank you.
You're now slanting it away, we
Yeah.
can't see it. There we go.
That's good, thank you.
So, my name is Jess Marino, I'm with Proterra Design Group. We're the civil site design engineers in the project. Our part of the project comes into fruition once the RF engineers and the site acquisition folks circle in on this ring that's identified as the gap in coverage, and they settle on a site. So that's where our role picks up. So, the site we're looking at here is the Anchor Plaza. It's located off of 3A. It's a collection of 3 to 4 parcels, about 5.6 acres in size. Currently, strip mall with a couple of restaurant buildings in the front, parking. We're locating the telecommunications facility, proposing it in the rear. There's an area back here that's partially cleared. We're looking to tuck it into that corner there. So we're located, this parcel is located partly in the Business B, partly in the Residential A district. Where the tower is located behind in that area that's been previously disturbed is our proposed tower. So it's located back in this corner here. We have a wetland to the east. This wetland here, it's a freshwater wetland that heads out towards Crow Point, to the, back out to the tidal flats there, and heads out to sea sort of in that northeast direction there. So we're, Tupelo Drive here is kind of to the northwest, Condito Drive is here, and again, the Crow Point street would be somewhere in this vicinity here. Kind of zooming in a little bit, this is an existing conditions map, so it's kind of the rear of the parcel now. We're kind of zoomed in on that area. We got residences here to the to our west, wetlands to the east, and we're trying to use this property back in this corner here. So we're off the pavement in this area here that's partially cleared. So zooming into the site, basically GTP has a lease area that they're proposing in the back. It's approximately 50 by 50. There's an access and utility easement that comes from the front by Lincoln Street, back around the back of the parcel to get access to the area here. So the compound itself would be a fenced, about 8-foot high wood fence proposing. Within it is where the carriers, in this case AT&T, would propose to put their wireless equipment. In this particular case, AT&T is proposing an exterior generator and a prefabricated shelter on the ground. The stuff around it here, because we're in the 100-foot buffer, we need to obviously file with conservation, but because we're a commercial facility, we need to abide by the stormwater management policy. So we do have proposed a swale, a sediment trap, and some infiltration. We've also proposed a small retaining wall here to keep us out of that 50-foot. So we have the ground equipment. Where does the antennas go? So what they're proposing is a 120-foot monopole. It's basically it's a tapered shield shaft. There's a foundation underground, and this holds the antenna and some of the radio equipment. From the shelter up inside, there's RF cables that deliver either fiber power communication up to this equipment. The pole is 120 feet, and at the top we're showing an air terminal, which is nothing more than like a lightning rod. Looking a little more closely on some of the things that AT&T is proposing. Again, they have a backup diesel generator proposed on the ground. This is necessary to provide power in the event of a power outage. This would provide the backup power necessary to keep the antennas active for 911 purposes and to be able to call and use your phones. There's also some pictures here of an equipment shelter. Basically, this is about a 10-foot tall by 20 feet long. They range in size. Some are a little bigger, some are a little smaller. And inside this is where they would have the radio equipment. In here, basically, the utilities, in this case, would be power and telecommunications would be terminate in the shelter, and the radio equipment and batteries and other equipment would be inside. No water or sewer is proposed. It's an unmanned facility. Someone would visit this site maybe once or twice a month, generally. Up top on the pole itself, there's a frame. The frame is designed to hold the appurtenances. In this case, they're antennas. There's also other radio and surge equipment up there. Because we're in the area next to the wetlands, we are proposing erosion control. We've also have dewatering basin and some other best management practices here to try to build this with the least impact as possible. You know, these things consist of basically silt fences and dewatering basin and, you know, limiting the amount of earth that's exposed at one time. The total area we're disturbing is about 10,000 square feet, just under. So it's not a big project as far as you know, earth disturbance is concerned. So that's what's currently submitted. About a month back, we met with staff. There was some comments that the town's reviewer, John Cheshire, had brought forth. He reviewed it both for conservation and through the zoning. So we had a pretty detailed memo. We're in the process of addressing those comments in there. We've also met with staff. One of the big outcomes of meeting with staff is understanding that they wanted to perform a full existing condition survey. What we've done previously was sort of a partial, so we're in the process now of doing a full existing condition survey of the entire parcel for the purposes of identifying other types of mitigation that we can propose for the stormwater, and also to determine that we're not eliminating parking spaces and other things that have come up in the memo. We were asked at that time if there was any possible location on the site that we could move this that would be a little bit farther away. We settled on, we looked at some other alternatives here, and based on the record plans that we pulled up from the last time this was in front of the board, which I believe was earlier this year, there isn't a lot of excess parking here. I believe what's on file says about 4 spots. So, you know, if we could come in here and take up another spot, you know, maybe a little farther away, we kind of look to do that, but in this particular case, there just isn't room to do so. We also looked at other areas here closer to the property line to put it, but it's complicated in the back here. In the full existing conditions plan will show this. There's a bunch of equipment back here, HVAC, there's egress out the back of the buildings, there's overhead power. So those areas are complicated and not really a good spot to move this. What we were able to do to try to address the comment, we were able to slide this pole about 15 feet east. And what that does is, the question came up on this 50 by 50 compound whether or not the pole has to be centered in it. It's certainly preferred that it's centered inside the compound, but it doesn't have to be. So we looked at doing that. So basically what will happen is this pole will slide here a little farther away. I believe something, or if it wasn't submitted to you, it will be the photo sims. Those represent the moved tower about 15 feet to try to get a little more buffer between the neighbors. Some of the other comments were related to stormwater. One of them was to provide some local test pits out here. We did that with John Cheshire earlier this month. We met out there with him. We got a small excavator, and we did some test pits here to determine the depth of groundwater and what the soils are. Basically what we found is this area was filled at one time, and we dug down below that fill, which is about 3 to 4 feet deep, and we got into kind of a sand, silty sand material. We did that in 2 places and got a pretty consistent result. One of the other things that was asked is for this tower, there's a foundation, and in order to design that foundation, it usually happens a little bit down the road for us at building permit, but we engaged our geotechnical engineer to go out. He's going to do a site-specific boring, and based on his recommendations, we'll be able to design the footing and get an exact size. One of the things that the other boards were looking at was, you know, how big is this and how much excavation will there be, and we'll be able to tell that from that. They'll also be able to use that information to narrow in on an exact pole manufacturer to look at. That's actually scheduled to happen just after Christmas, so that's coming up. The reviewer also has asked us to investigate some of the existing underground utilities, particularly the stormwater. So we've engaged some folks that have closed-circuit TV camera equipment that can crawl in some of these lines and determine, to make sure that the plan we provide you is as accurate as we can on where everything goes. The importance of that is one of the items that was up for discussion here with the folks that own the plaza is kind of coming up with a maintenance plan moving forward on the parking area to help to help mitigate for this. The last thing, there were some requests based on a site visit. There was some debris and tires and things behind the building, and we're working with the landlord there, Anchor Realty Trust, to get rid of some of those things. There's also some fence that's going to be repaired, and we did notice some kind of illegal dumping back there by probably some other folks, obviously not them, and they were looking to install some security measures back there, I believe some cameras and things to help that. We're currently discussing that with them as part of the mitigation. That's really all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? No?
Yeah, I want to understand what's being presented.
Sure.
Is what's being presented the proposal that you'd like us to review, or is the proposal that you'd like us to review something different where it's been moved?
We moved slightly.
So, but when we look at the plans, we want to know what's being proposed. So should we be looking at that, or will you be sending in a new set of plans that will show it as you want it?
That's a good question.
Okay.
It's close to this. It's not exact. We are working on plans that are going to update this. One of the things that we're working on, and when we met with staff, was they were looking for a full existing conditions plan. So we're waiting for that to come back. It's currently underway to do so. And that way we can get this information on that entire plan and present it to you once. So that's underway to do that. The difference between the type of limited survey that we did versus that full survey is quite a bit of work. We've actually engaged a local firm out of Weymouth to help us do that, and to get something that would be considered a boundary and full existing conditions plan here. So
Right.
that's not the norm that we normally would do on a tower, but we've realized that both the bylaw and meeting with the folks in town that's something they're looking for. So when we get that information, we're going to kind of monument these changes into that. I wouldn't call them significant, but I think they're a step in the right direction to try to meet some of the concerns of the reviewer.
Right, but there's two issues. One is a full description of the property in the survey. That's
Yep.
one set. And the second is the placement of what you're proposing.
Yep.
And what I'm understanding is that the placement is not as shown here. It's going to be moved a little bit.
It's going to be moved
Right, but
based upon
Right.
the reviewer's suggestion. So we're in the process of doing that. So
Okay.
it's actually going to be getting farther away from the property.
You said about 15 feet.
About 15
Yep.
feet, correct. Correct.
Any other questions? Mr. Ramsey, anybody, planning board? No? Okay.
I have a couple. Got it.
Sarah, sure, please.
Have you presented the plans to Concom?
We have been in front of Concom once. It was, trying to remember the date. It was, do you recall? I don't recall off the top of my head. It was probably a couple months ago now. And sometime in November, I believe. Early November. We had just received the comments within a couple of days from the reviewer then. So we presented the same plan and really hadn't had a chance at that time to review all the comments. In between then and now, we've met a couple times with Mr. Cheshire, once at the field visit out here to look at some of the drainage, existing drainage on the site, and also to do those test pits. And we also met with staff, with him as well, to go over all the comments and to try to get our arms around some of the extra items that everybody was looking for. So we're fully underway with trying to meet each and one of those items that were brought forth, beginning with that full existing condition survey.
You said that the tower is 15 feet from the fence or 15 feet from the abutter's property?
No, it's going to be moved 15 feet further away from the abutter's
All
property.
right, so how far is it right now from the abutter's property?
It's 68 feet, so we're planning to move it another 15 feet away, so
83.
it maybe be about 82, 83 feet there.
And how many abutters directly abut the property?
Well, I'd have to count it off the top of my head here, but looks like 1, 2, 3, count this little sliver, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7.
Do you have a lighting plan?
No, when it's not proposed to be lit. I believe FAA has come back and said that it does not have to be lit as well. The only lighting that would be there would be egress lighting on the building itself, and that's controlled by building code. So basically at the egress points at the door, there's kind of small lighting, just like you'd have at your home, kind of when you walk in your house. So in this location here, there'd be a small light, small low voltage light, low wattage light, excuse me.
Just a question, you know, our town's personal wireless overlay district allows for a 100-foot tower. Why is this exceeding that by 20 feet?
That's not a question I can answer. That's an RF kind
Okay.
of question, is the ability for them to provide coverage. So I would defer to them when they come up.
Okay.
Sarah, I would say that that's an issue that we're going to be handling or dealing with as we go through this, so.
Okay, and
So we
then I
can
guess
certainly
my
have that answer for you.
other question would be, are we gonna have figures on the noise of the generator?
There is a noise consultant here, so I would defer that to him as well.
Okay, I have other questions, but I'll wait. Thank you.
I'm gonna ask a couple questions. So there's gonna be no lighting on the top of the tower?
None
It's
proposed.
not required for like low-flying aircraft or anything like that, to have something blinking on the top of it?
No, there's a process that goes through to do that. There's a filing that happens, and determination is made. And in this case, it doesn't have to be lit like that.
And so, and the lighting you're proposing is, can you describe that to me again? Because I certainly don't want any lighting to impact the abutters, given where it's gonna be. So again, at the egress point of the building, the shelter here is about 10 feet tall. So there'd be a egress light proposed by the door. It goes on switch, and usually they have a motion option as well. But keep in mind that we're behind an 8-foot solid fence. So I don't think that this light here is of such height and type that would really impact the neighbors here. And another question too, we've had quite a history with parking in the site, and to be candid with you, it hasn't been a very positive history with parking on the site.
Yeah.
So how many spots are you gonna be taking up?
Well, that's a good question. Right now, as we show it, we currently show 1. Now, that was based upon our understanding that there was some excess parking here. Depending on when the results of the existing condition survey come back, we'll be able to confirm that. But we were proposing sort of 1 striped spot here to be able to get in. But to be honest, in your zoning and in most municipalities, this use doesn't statutorily require a parking space. So we really don't need to do that. The infrequency of folks coming here really doesn't necessitate necessarily to take up a space. You don't have to do that. If we turn out to have excess parking, it's something we can look at, but it's not something that we have to do.
Well, I would suggest to you that the adequacy of the arrangement of parking is in our site plan review criteria.
Sure.
I mean, it's on criteria C, so,
Sure.
um,
I don't think that we impact that, I guess is what I'm saying. Once this thing's built, as long as tech folks can walk in and get access, and maybe on an infrequent basis, they need to bring some vehicles in to work on the tower or something, you know, to stripe up a parking space just for that sole purpose is probably not necessarily. Again, we are working on the notion that there were some extra spots to do so, and that's kind of how we're moving forward, but parking seems to be a real concern. Done some research in town on it, and also talked with the folks at Anchor Plaza, so I guess the outcome of that is to be seen, but we definitely don't have to lose that spot if it's a big concern.
You mentioned a generator, you also mentioned batteries. Is a generator a backup generator? Are you going to store diesel fuel within the structure? And what, you did mention batteries. Are batteries an alternative to the generator, or what's the need for both?
So to answer your first question, the equipment, this telecommunications equipment in here primarily runs on DC, direct current, so not generally what you find in your homes. So when we get it from the street, it's alternating current.
Yeah.
We got to bring it in, and there's equipment in here, rectifiers that change that AC to DC and store it in batteries, okay?
Okay.
In the event of a power outage, it can run on the batteries for a little bit, but then this would start up. This is a backup generator to feed that, to keep those batteries charged and able to work. If you can imagine, there's quite a bit of equipment in there, so that's really essential for them to do that. The particular one that's proposed here has it's a generator on top of a base tank. So there's about a 200-gallon double wall tank under here that provides about 48 hours or so of backup power at full load for this type of generator.
2 days, and how much do the batteries, how long can they go on the batteries?
It's not really my department, I don't exactly know.
But a short period of time?
Yeah, hours, I would say, not days. That's at full load with actually full fuel. So you can imagine, you know, maybe under half load, et cetera, or with some reduced fuel, it could maybe be a few more days.
So there is some on-site storage of fuel for that.
There is, 200
I'm
gallons.
assuming that there's an integrated a double-wall tank,
There is,
spill
yeah.
protection, et
Underneath,
cetera.
it is, I'm not sure if in the documents provided, there was a catalog cut on that, but if there isn't, we could provide one. There is? Okay. So there's, somewhere in your information packet there is a catalog cut on that.
Exhibit 8.
Exhibit,
Thank you.
And also just with regards to the question with regards to whether or not the structure would be lit, generally, 200 feet or less, the structure is not lit. In Exhibit 15 to our application, we submitted the FAA report.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think at this time we want to turn to talking with our radio frequency engineer, consulting engineer, to talk about his review of the application to date, highlight the issues. As I understand, the revised site plan and that information will coming in. We didn't get a date, but it sounds like that's sometime in January at the earliest.
Yeah, we're trying to get it in, as like I said, as soon as possible. One of the things is the detailed existing conditions plan.
Right.
So that's in the process. They've been out, I believe they're this week doing some of the work, but, you know, I think it was supposed to be in earlier, but with the snow and things, that kind of slows things down. But as soon as we get it, we're going to turn it around as quickly as we can and get it into you
So
guys.
Earlier the better, so.
We're going to have our consultant present before the applicant makes their
Yeah,
case for the, or do we?
Yeah, I would think we'd want to hear from
Yeah,
them.
I'd like to maybe have
For the
our
applicant.
consultant hear the presentation by the
Right,
applicant,
true.
and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Your board.
yeah.
I guess it was our understanding that we were going to hear from
Right.
your expert with regards to the report, and then Shane is here to respond to that, or Shane can chat briefly with regards to the
Well, is there at least an overview of the report, just so you can talk about why you feel there is a need for the service, why there is a significant gap? And I think we can just take it from there. I mean, because that's really a fundamental issue here, so. Yeah, right.
Shane Eagleson, RF engineer, AT&T. I provided the plots. I guess I should start at the beginning. We get a search area driven by customers. Sorry. Shane Eagleson, RF engineer, AT&T. We get an area of
Some people are not hearing you.
Yeah.
Do I have to?
There you
Well,
Is it going?
It's not amplified for the room, it's amplified for the, yeah.
Right in the back, like once or, no, in the, like,
There it goes.
the knob right behind you.
Well, that'll turn it up in the,
Yep, just a couple, that should be fine.
Try that.
One.
so try that.
Shane Eagleson, AT&T, RF engineer.
Yeah, just,
Should I just speak louder? All right.
Can't we have a little fun and say, can you hear me now? Turn that on. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I rule
appreciated.
you out of order, sir.
Shane Eagleson, AT&T. I'm an RF design engineer. We get reports from customer data and drive tests that independent third parties do of the area that identify places in Massachusetts and other markets throughout the United States that show that we need coverage. We also check customer records and data of any failures or customers who call in and have issues with service. Data speeds, drop calls, stuff of that nature. We put out a search map, a search area, and a real estate person, a site acquisition person, goes out and checks the area, looks for local interest in the area, and then brings that information back to me, and I evaluate it. This is the best location to provide service in the Bridge Street, Downer Ave area. Due to terrain to the northeast is why we're asking for the 120 feet.
Could you describe that terrain for us that requires the 120 feet?
Well, there's a raised elevation. Over amplified. The terrain to the northeast that rises up, heading up Downers Ave, the tree lines, that's what we're trying to get over with the height. Otherwise, we'd be shooting right into the side of the hill.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have AT&T coverage, I haven't experienced that problem, so maybe I'm one of the lucky ones, but I bet all the abutters want to know tonight, do you have to put it in this location? It's a highly populated location, a lot of people live around this area. Do you try to search out other locations where it might be more suitable for this project?
Yes, our site acquisition person goes out and looks for landlord interest in the area, and this is the one that was provided that worked the best.
Do you have a map that shows us kind of frequencies in different locations where the gaps are, where other towers are?
Well, that was provided.
Yep.
But that everybody here could see, that you could sort of talk to, you know, a little bit, show us kind of where on that map other providers are successful in providing service, why AT&T
Well, I don't
not?
have other providers' information.
I think that, I would like to see that stuff if it's available. I think that's very pertinent information.
Right, I mean, if Verizon has service in this area, then why can't AT&T tap into Verizon's tower, wherever they are?
We're independent companies, and I don't have knowledge of Verizon's coverage.
But when we approve a tower, it's with the understanding that multiple providers will be using that tower.
It's available for them to use, yes. Co-locate,
Right.
yes.
And I guess if I may, we did submit this evening an updated ASA, an alternative site analysis, which provides all the locations in which the site acquisition consultants from out looked. And it provides the location and the reason for rejection. And with regards to the question regarding Verizon Wireless or AT&T, This presentation is for AT&T. AT&T has the gap in coverage in this area, and whether or not Verizon Wireless provides service here or anyone else is not relevant to this.
But isn't the availability of other towers relevant?
The availability of other towers is absolutely relevant, and if there was another tower that was available that AT&T could locate on, we would absolutely be located there. So we've searched this search ring, and we've looked at all available structures, we've looked at all tall structures, and we've looked at all raw land. So that encompasses anything that we could look at with regards to where can we locate this site. There's no towers available, there's no other raw land sites that are available, and there are no tall buildings that are available. So our submittal to you is that this is the best, the most reasonable candidate for this site. A site that will, as Shane will say, will close that gap in coverage that AT&T has.
So I appreciate what you said. Much of what you said were conclusions, none of which you're testifying to because you didn't do the work. So we'll be hearing from whoever actually is going to substantiate that. I want to stay with the person that we've got now who's actually going to be giving us the information on radio frequency, and then we're going to talk about who actually did the searches, who looked at the other locations, and why they were or were not available, what co-locations were available. That clearly is going to be part of what the zoning board does as part of our review. But if we can, just staying on the radio frequency expert that we have here, and then we'll move on. Is it your understanding that there currently is a gap, or are you projecting that there's a...
There is currently a gap.
And what are your parameters for the gap? How do you measure that, and how do we know how severe it is?
We have
If I
independent...
could add to that, are we just talking voice? Are we talking data? Are we talking in-building?
We're probably talking more...
Outside the building,
right,
in-car, et cetera?
We're talking in-building, data, the amount of people that are trying to, if I can use the analogy of a piece of pie.
Mm-hmm.
You have a piece of pie, everybody has to share that piece of pie. So everybody wants to like something on Facebook, everybody wants to download a video, that pie gets bigger and bigger. So adding another pie, which would be a tower, to offload that amount of use is basically the biggest thing here. But the coverage along Downer and going up, Bridge Street going up Downers Ave is also,
Yeah, Bridge Street's in Weymouth.
Yeah.
Downer Ave is the biggest issue.
Are you saying that they're currently Are you saying that there are currently dropped calls in this area?
Yes, we have data. We also have third-party drive test that was submitted in the map.
Okay.
I have that section on it. Yeah, nothing else here.
I don't see that. For David.
So where do I look to see the drop call information?
That would be the drive map here.
No, the CD wants to see full detail records.
No, that's not the right one.
Do we have that here?
I think it's not, no.
So that information is not in the record? Is that something that you can get to us?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of if you can rate gaps or gap problems that AT&T has, is this one of the more severe ones, less severe ones? Where does this fall along the gradation of problems that AT&T is experiencing?
Well, there is sparse coverage through the area, and at different times of the year with foliage and different weather conditions, those gaps change. And as usage changes, those gaps expand and contract with the amount of service that can be done by that tower due to its demand by the customers.
So getting back to what I asked, where does this gap stand in relation to AT&T's coverage issues? Is this a
It's
severe
a-
gap, or is it less severe than other gaps?
It's a average gap that we find to be of concern.
Okay. What geographic area are you using to determine that this is an average gap?
In relationship to the rest of the southeast Boston area of Massachusetts.
Okay. Is there data we could look at that would tell me what those gaps are in the other areas, so we could see where there's falls?
Anything can be worked out, I guess?
Well, I mean,
what would
but
you like to see?
Well, you've come up with an opinion. I'm asking you what you've looked at, and then I don't need you to come up with something.
Well, I look at all of
Okay.
southeastern Massachusetts, the Cape, Rhode Island on a daily basis. And I deal with customers on a daily basis and try to resolve issues for the company in regards to coverage, capacity, drops.
The proposed tower, how much would it remedy the gap?
It would solve 98% of the gap. I can't speak, I could never be 100%. I can't go in everybody's house and check everybody's house.
But based on your analysis and projections,
Yes.
and what sort of study do you do to figure that out?
We use a product called ATOL. It takes geographical information, it takes your zoning information, your commercial, your residential, industrial areas. It takes a representation of the trees and the type of foliage that's around, and it applies mathematical, it degrades it
Right.
based on what it's hitting.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were not constrained by what was available, in other words, if you were to look at the map and say, here is where I'd like to place a cell tower to solve the problem, and you could pick anywhere, and it didn't matter if there was a compliant landlord or not, you could pick it. Would this be among your first top two choices, this location?
Yes, anywhere at that intersection would be the ideal.
So this is, in your view, your ideal location?
Ideal to the fact that the landlord and we can work together to make
Okay,
this
but
happen.
okay, so what I specifically asked you is to ignore whether or not you had a
Well,
compliant.
I said I
landlord.
would put it right at the intersection, right at that gas station.
So,
Dunkin' Donuts.
so your best location would be at the gas station there? I think that's a.
AJ's, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Which would be further removed from the neighbors, but I understand that,
Oh, yeah.
that spot may not be available. That would be your first choice.
Yes.
Okay.
No. No?
You guys, good.
Sure, if you want.
I had
Site
just-
plan issues, sure.
Two quick questions for you. When I heard about this proposal coming in, the first thing I thought about was the smokestack at the shipyard. Less densely populated, aesthetically, it's gonna be inside the stack. And you've listed here as one of your alternative sites, but why were these sites denied? Because of topographical reasons?
We are already on that smokestack.
You're already on it?
It should be listed there as my response.
You've seen the photos.
So, if I could, so I live in the shipyard, and I'm an AT&T customer, and I've got 5 bars of service everywhere in the shipyard. It's great. So you're saying if I go down Downer Avenue, that 5 bars is gonna go to what? What are your?
It would
test-
slowly degrade as you pass the school on the right, I believe it's Foster.
Foster, yeah.
And as you go up behind those hills and that terrain, and you're on the other side at the yacht club,
Yeah.
you start to pick up some sparse signals from across the, you're just getting hit by multiple different signals over there. So it's not
All right, but.
dominant service, I should say. You'd be on sparse 2-3 bars. none at some points.
Okay, so and that's, how are we defining, so 2 or 3 bars, generally, I can make a call, I can, you know, I get the functionality out of my phone. What, from a practical standpoint, how do we kind of think of a gap in coverage? In 5 bars, there's no gap, is 3, you know, what, can you put it in layman's terms, or does it all relate to the coverage maps that you've provided?
It all has to do with the situation you're in, you know. I can't speak to where everybody's standing in the area up there. All I can say is that there's sparse coverage along the area up there that's causing issues for customers.
Okay, and that, those issues, those complaints, those drop call logs, those are all, that data is all available?
Yeah, we have maps that we can produce.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Did you look at having the tower on top of the buildings that are on this property as opposed to having a cell tower behind the building?
No, that wasn't offered.
In terms of location, to address the gap issue, would that work equally as well?
I'd have to evaluate the height that it would get there and to see, you know, if I could, the terrain limitation to the northeast is my issue for the height.
I'm confused because I thought in your report, you were saying you'd actually had looked at everything and this was the best location. And now I'm hearing you say you didn't look at this, so you're not sure if this location would work.
Well, I wasn't offered the roof of the strip mall, are we talking about?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
The roof is not falling
I mean,
I understand, but if you put a structure on top of that is what I'm asking,
well,
would
it
that work?
wouldn't feasibly work to put a 100-foot structure on top of a one-story strip mall.
So you're talking about from a design standpoint. And I'm
Correct.
asking
I
you
don't-
from an RF, from your qualifications, would that location work?
At that height, yes.
Okay.
The 120 feet, yes. 120 feet comes from the terrain.
If the tower was limited to 100 feet rather than 120, would the gap be addressed?
Not fully. I'd stop at the top of the hill.
Okay, so in other words, if the gap was whatever it is, and 120 feet addressed it 100%, bring it down to 100 feet, would that reduce it to 95%, 90%? How much? I understand
I
it
would
would be
have to
full.
say it would probably be about 86, 85%, because that whole northeast section would be limited due to terrain. The height is to go over the terrain. If I'm at 100, if I'm at 120, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Are there
It's
other
the topographical
Are there
terrain.
other locations where the height of 120 feet would not be required because the terrain, you'd be on a different side of the
Right,
terrain?
anywhere where I can see up, down, or Ave.
And on the monopole that you've proposed, you've already mentioned your desire for co-location by other carriers.
Yes.
Some of the panel antennas are at 86 feet, 96 feet. If those work for others, but they don't work, they wouldn't work for you?
I can't speak for the other companies. It's just co-locatable. If other people have an interest in
The
that.
structure would be built to accommodate other carriers. Would another carrier come in and co-locate on that structure? We don't know. For example, Verizon Wireless might come in and see that the available height is 117 or whatever the case might be, or lower than that, and say this isn't going to work for us. It's not going to provide the coverage that we're looking to do. So they might come in and say we need to extend the height of that structure, or they might have to locate a structure someplace else. We don't know. We wouldn't know that.
Okay, but the
The tower is proposed as being built, structurally, so that if someone else, wanted to co-locate, they could.
Right, and if they did co-locate, they'd have that antenna panel array They'd have what you've shown in your visual impact studies with the views of the crane test. They would have another panel array, other arrays below that, below the one you've shown?
That's correct.
So you could have as many as 4 of those arrays on that pole, based on sheet A3?
Can I just ask you guys a question? This is a public hearing, and we're trying to shed light and understand this better. And there's no map that, like, you can refer to and say, you know, this is, it just seems like when we build a field and we put lights on it, they come with a map and they show us where the sound goes, where the light goes, and it sort of crystallizes. This is a very confusing little piece of paper to deliver in a public hearing to try to shed light on a situation. And I'm just wondering, is this the way you always make presentations of this kind, or is there some kind of a visual aid that would kind of make this a more productive conversation?
Well, I guess I would say that I think that we have presented significant visual aids.
To the public? I mean, it's a public hearing. To the public? You know, like an overhead something?
All these
or-
materials are available.
Yeah.
Downtown, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that we actually, when we showed up today, we made additional copies so that they could be handed out to the abutters. So all the photo sims were provided in additional copies. The ASA, the alternative site analysis, it's a spreadsheet, and it's a list of all the properties that were visited and the specific reasons as to why those were objected to. You know, the coverage maps, they're included in everybody's materials, is, I think, something that's been shared with everyone that, clearly depicts, the existing coverage and what the proposed coverage would be, with the facility.
Just seemed that somebody trying to be a good neighbor and of the caliber of AT&T as a company, that you would arrive with something that helped everybody in the room sort of be part of the conversation.
Certainly, I'm happy to provide more copies than what you did on the petition.
I mean, we're 60 minutes into this hearing, I'm still scratching my head why we need this. I mean, and maybe your data, okay. And maybe your drop call data will shed some light on this issue, but Mr. McGrath asked a great question. He can still make a phone call with 2 bars. He can still send an email with 2 bars. You can go down to the yacht club and still do it.
Before you answer, I have a request. I'll start with a request. We need to not have cheering, clapping, comments from the audience. This is going to be a long hearing. Everyone's going to have a chance, but I'm not going to stand for that. Sorry. So, okay, thank you.
Well, I can respond to that question specifically, and I can respond to it like a lawyer. There is well-settled case law in the federal circuit that says that there's that there's no right, if you're familiar with it, then you know that there's no right line that defines what a significant gap is. And it's the carrier, it's AT&T, that determines what that significant gap is. This board and this audience is not allowed to state what those coverage objectives should be from AT&T. What we need to do is present reasonable evidence that there's a significant gap in coverage. And we've done that multiple ways, and we'll continue to provide information as requested of Shane tonight. We've done that by showing propagation maps that shows the existing coverage and what the proposed coverage would be. Just from looking at those maps, we can see that there's a gap in coverage. We've shown a terrain map. We have Shane's affidavit, and we have the drive test data. I can represent to you that that is more than enough for the federal court, the First Circuit Federal Court, to say that AT&T has a significant gap in coverage. In fact, there's a case that talks about along a roadway, a 50-foot diameter. A 50-foot diameter along a busy roadway is enough to represent a significant gap in coverage. If we determine there's a significant gap in coverage, what we need to do is show you that we've done our homework, that we've gone out there and we've taken a look at every site that we could look at in this search ring, and we've scrubbed it, and we've asked if folks are interested. We've looked to see if there's space available on that lane. We've looked to see if there's any other structures. And I can represent to you, as will this team, the site acquisition specialists that will that can testify as to that document, not me, that we've gone out there, we've looked at all the alternative locations out there, and we can't find one. We want to find one, we want to find the best location. But I can say with regards to gap and coverage, there is no bright line, and it's AT&T's decision.
Is this a propagation map?
That
Can you
would-
show
that
me
would
the
be
picture?
described.
Can we turn to your propagation map, and could you explain that to everybody, please? And could you tell us which one it is?
I don't think I have it.
It's in the radio frequency. It's there.
I also, while we're talking maps, I don't understand this one, so I'm hoping you can give us some indication what's going on that one.
That's an independent drive. They go out quarterly.
Let's go one map at a time and sort
Okay.
of go into real detail, because, you know.
So you'd like to go with the
We
existing
could talk
coverage?
about the law, but we really do want to understand this. We don't just want to be buried in,
So we're looking
Yeah,
at the
if you could.
existing
If
coverage
you could.
today?
yes, which one? Can you just say what it says across the top, please?
Do we have those?
Have them, we don't have to-
Okay.
We have 10, 11, 12, and 5.
Right. Yep.
Original 5, 6, 10, 11, 12.
Can you just say what it says across the top of the map you're going to talk about?
Is it, like, are you talking about this one so that we know?
It says existing AT&T coverage
Yeah,
without the
without,
proposed
yeah.
Right,
GLP
yep,
site.
Okay.
Yep.
That was tab 11.
Yep,
in the
tab
original
11.
filing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't have tabs.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, certainly based upon the request with regards to these maps, I am happy to have the space and we can accommodate to bring in a projector and put this on the screen with a PowerPoint presentation to really depict that if necessary.
Well, we certainly have the facilities to do that. Obviously, that wouldn't happen this evening.
Right.
How do you guys feel? I mean, I think it's a
I would
very
take
good
them up on that.
suggestion, but I would take it up, I would take the applicant up on that, and I would ask that we do that at our next session. So,
Yeah.
because I think it would really help, because we've been through this several times, and it's still, I mean, we really have to look at these and scrutinize them so we understand it. So, people who haven't seen these before, I can understand.
That's not a problem.
Right, okay.
Can we, just so that I know it and understand, what it is that was asked, additional, I think you, Mr. McGuire, were asking for some specific information.
Event data, it'll have everything on it. Event data, I'll have everything on it,
Right.
not
Yeah,
just
the-
drops.
That's right, the drop calls
The
and
event.
event
Yeah.
data,
Yeah.
and as it compares to Boston, southeastern Mass,
Right.
the area.
But I guess, I mean, just going through the report, for example, paragraph 3, I've thoroughly reviewed the radio frequency engineering studies, reports, and computer models prepared by AT&T with respect to the site, and that's what he's relying on. So we want to see what it is that he's relying on, so that we know what is supporting the report that's issued here.
I think part of that is what's been submitted, correct?
Right, but I think we identified things that were not submitted, things that were.
Right.
So if there's items that were not submitted that he's relying on, we'd like to see it.
Okay.
Okay.
Just as a preliminary matter, typically we do with experts, what is your expertise? What's your background? I don't see, maybe it's here, like your educational background, your qualifications, what is it
I
that?
studied electrical and electronic engineering in the United States Navy. I worked for Motorola in paging. I've worked for numerous two-way. I worked for Sprint for a brief period of time, and for the last 13 years, I've been designing for AT&T.
So do you have an undergraduate degree, graduate degree? What are your,
I don't have any degree.
Well, since you are testifying as an expert, maybe you can get us your CV next time, for the next hearing, if possible.
Okay?
I mean, you signed, your counsel indicated you signed an affidavit, so he wants us to give the affidavit weight, so a CV of an expert would be appreciated.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Anything else, John?
No.
Todd? Anything else? I think at this point we should hear from our expert, perhaps?
Well,
Or
do you want to respond to this, or do you want to wait till we hear the sound? Or just- Okay.
No.
I think you've got to,
Okay.
the sound is, I think you've got to look for the article. I'm not going to tell you to run your meeting,
Right.
but you've got this
Yeah,
while
oh, yeah,
it's fresh in
yeah,
your mind.
Yeah, okay.
No, I think it's a good idea. At this point, we're going to turn to our radio frequency expert to hear his issues, his concerns, his comments, so we can determine what, if any, additional information that we might want to hear. And I think we want to hear a little bit about the noise issues, just so we've covered that. And then we'll open it up for some comments and questions. I should say we've got another hearing scheduled for this evening, so we don't have an unlimited amount of time here. And we know we're going to come back, so we're not going to get to everything tonight, but we will get to everything.
And I'll try to move this along for you because of your time constraints. Chairman Freeman, and I assume Chairman Ramsey, good evening. My name is Ronald Grafe. I'm an independent radio frequency consulting engineer, and I've been retained by your board through Emily to review this application before your boards, a critical review from the need point of view from AT&T to construct this site. As an independent consulting engineer, I have a bachelor's science degree in electrical engineering from the Pennsylvania State University. I'm a licensed professional engineer for nearly 40 years now, and I've spent my entire career working with radio frequency energy. I designed the very first cellular systems in the United States back in the late 70s is one of the things that I've done. In this critical review, I will serve two purposes. I will assist your board in understanding the things that you're seeing that you don't understand. Hopefully, when I'm done, you'll be as expert as any witness that will come up here. And number two, I think more importantly, I will create a record for your board that will assist you in making your decision, and if your decision goes one way or it goes the other way, your decision, because of that record, will survive any challenges that be made to that decision. That is my purpose here, to ensure that you have all the information. So let's begin. Have you guys seen, boards, have you seen a copy of my report to the board dated November 4th?
Yes, we have.
You have that with you, so we can just
Yes.
quickly go over it? Okay. And I just want you to know, I concentrated on a couple of things, the most important things. Primarily, those were the exhibits prepared by Shane. Shane, okay. And let's just look at some of those quickly from that original one. And as I said, it was tab 11.
Right.
You asked about that. So if you want to grab tab 11, that's this one. And it says AT&T coverage without proposed GTP site. And what this is a calculated propagation map of what they think their coverage is, but it's done by a computer. It's done by a computer simulation. And I found out something tonight. He said he used ATOL, that's a model, but after seeing these things, it had Forsig on it, so I thought he was using that model. So I will need clarification.
Forsig is the company that.
Oh, they did it?
No, Forsig is the company that creates ATOL.
Okay, that was confusing, because there's a couple of models, so you're using the ATOL model, okay. And in this, in my comments, I said, I give up, what do those greens mean? What do the reds mean? What do the blues mean? What do the yellows mean? Because typically on such propagation maps, we will have the level of frequency energy indicated on those maps. And you asked the question of what, forget about bars. Bars don't mean anything because bars are a subject of the telephone itself. They're meaningless. They give you an idea, but they're not the hard data that this line that we talked about that was mentioned tonight that the carrier says that's the level. Those are signal levels. And I asked for that in my report to your board. I said, what are the signal levels? Now, there was a new filing tonight, and I don't know if you've had a chance to go over that. I just got it the other day, looked at it quickly and looked at it again tonight. Basically, the green is minus 75 dBm. That's a decibel with respect to a milliwatt. That's a very strong signal. That's the kind of signal that will work in buildings such as this. Massive structures built of brick and concrete that attenuate radio signals. Blue, in vehicle. And that's defined as minus 85 decibels. Now, this is a reverse scale, so the bigger the number, the weaker the signal. Minus 85 decibels is accepted by the industry, and I point out in my report the ETSI, the European Technical Standards Institute, which developed GSM, the system that they're using, as well as LTE. Minus 85 dBm is good for in-vehicle or in suburban building. Your home, a wood frame building with windows and a regular shingle roof, minus 85 dBm. Minus 95 dBm is depicted on this in yellow, which is on street coverage. If you've got a handheld phone and you're walking around on the street or in a relatively rural area, that'll work just fine. And red was below that, and I think they finally said that that was a minus 105. That's probably a useless signal. And I said, what's white? Well, I guess white means no signal at all. So fine. So in looking at these maps, when you look at them, you can assume that green is really good, yellow is okay, and blue is something that you would experience driving in your car in general or in your home, things like that. And red would be, or yellow would be if you're on the street. If you see red on this map, that would be a dearth of signal. That wouldn't be strong enough to work, and white would be no signal at all. So that's how this allegedly was determined that there was a gap. But remember, this is a model, and a model is only as good as the data that makes it up. Part of the problems I had with the original report, it's claimed that in paragraph 11, Mr. Eagleson notes that the coverage map is the area encompassing all along Downer Avenue from Lincoln Street, east of Brady Woods Drive, to the east side of Broad Cove Road and surrounding nearby roads. So I looked at these maps. I give up.
Good to see that.
I'm from out of town, and I don't know where any of those roads are, and even if I did know where they were, I couldn't tell. One of the things I requested in my first report, and I love it, the A&E guys always do this. When they show you where the site's going to be, what is that? A USGS map, United States Geodetic Survey map, 7.5-minute topographic map. I've heard tonight about terrain to the northeast. Yet at the site, I'm looking at Baker Hill, Squirrel Hill. I mean, when I hear the word hill, I think of terrain. I mean, where I live in Connecticut, we've got, it's a little bigger than that hill, you know, maybe 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 feet. But when I'm looking to the northeast, I see some wetlands, I see 30 feet, then I see this ragged island that looks like it's a tidal swamp there. So I keep looking, okay, I give up, where's the terrain? I asked to have these propagation plots prepared on 7.5-minute topographic maps because it helps me and it helps you. You can see, oh, there's a substation there. Oh, there's a supply depot. That's one of those strong buildings that needs a really good signal. Oh, here's some houses down here, so they need the weaker signal. And then there are a lot of roads. And all of a sudden, I can see where Downer Street is. So now I know where it is. I couldn't tell on this. Yet in the package that was received today, same old maps. Maps are useless because you have to make a decision based upon a true gap in coverage. So let's move along then to tab 12. And that's with the site in place. Once again, you see the coverage there, but now the site is here. And it's added a new little bit of green, some blue, and not very much to the southeast. If you look at that, it's still primarily red and primarily white. And curiously, down there, and if you look really closely, you see there's a site that hasn't been built yet called 702A. You've got to look really closely to see it on that map, but that's a vapor site. That's a site that they want to see. But we don't know what the coverage from that site would be like because they haven't shown it to us. It could be with the dearth of coverage down there that that site might very well provide coverage, but we don't know. Once again, the evidence is missing. And I think 4 times tonight I've heard the word search ring. Read my report. What does my report ask for? I'd like to see the search ring. Because it could be that this site is too close to an existing site already when you base it on his testimony that it talks about a regular reuse grid. It's too close to perhaps other existing sites, or it doesn't fill in the gap. AT&T had to develop a search ring before the Global Tower people went out, or the site acquisition specialist went out to look for something. They just don't say, where are we gonna go? They need a search ring. Sometimes it's not a ring. Sometimes it's an irregular polygon. It's whatever they come up with, but at least it's in the record then, in evidence, this is where we looked, and then you can see that site, and if it's in the center of the search ring, if it's east of the search ring, if it's out of the search ring, or what other of these available sites are in that search ring. So that was my next comment. Then I went to this map. This was tab 13 in my letter to you. That was this one. And that one, that says the 10-mile radius map. That's, I think, is part of your ordinance that you require them to show every existing site or site that they have in the 10-mile radius. And I think that is supported by this dump here, this dump of data that shows all the different sites. And this is what confused me. When I look at that one, it's in my report, you see a red dot. I assume the red dot is the site in question. Just to the west of it, there's another site. My gosh, that's close. But I can't see it on these maps. I don't see it on the propagation maps, so I asked for some explanation there as to what that was. I went on for a couple of other things, and this will get to your question that you had before. If you look at the latest submission, this map. Let's take a look at that one. You want to all grab that map?
Yeah.
This is what
Last page of their submission tonight. Yeah.
This is what AT&T is called a drive test. Now, it's really interesting because, well, there's a couple things about this. One of the reasons I asked to see drive test, and if you recall, when it said there was going to be a crane test, I asked for continuous wave drive tests.
Yes.
That's where they hang an antenna from the crane, and they drive the area, and they make all of these measurements. It's the ideal time to do that, because putting a crane in is quite expensive. Hanging an antenna and making a drive test is a fraction of that cost. The big cost is the crane. I don't know why they didn't do it, but they did. Fine, we'll get over it. So let's look at their drive test. What did they drive? They drove this road. I don't know what you call that road, I can't tell.
That's
Lincoln Street,
3A or Lincoln Street, yeah.
Then they drew, was that Thacker?
Baxter.
Union Street?
Yeah.
Okay, and then they drove Beale Street. You know what's fun? They didn't drive any
Down
of the
there.
streets where he said they had a gap in coverage. They had gaps in coverage up here.
This is an independent.
Well, I don't care who it is. I asked for drive tests of the system, scan tests. And AT&T, as well as Verizon, as well as Sprint, as well as T-Mobile, has a network performance group. They drive the system every 3 months to make sure it's good. I want to see that data. Because this is meaningless. Here's the other reason it's meaningless. I was trying to verify the accuracy of these computer-generated calculated plots, because some computer thought this up. We don't know the model, we don't know how accurate it is. Why I wanted that is in what we typically do. We take the computer-generated map and we overlay it on the drive test map. And that's why I asked for similar bins. Read my report. Similar bins. That way you can say, look at that, where there's green on this map, look at that, there's green on the drive test. Where there's red on this map, there's red on the drive test. And that's the other curious thing about this map, since it's not complete. The good signal strengths are along this road. The bad signal strengths are along this road. Thaxter, I guess that is. Is that right?
Yeah, Baxter Street.
No, Lincoln. Is that?
Baxter Street, this is the one on the east,
Oh,
yes,
Thaxter
Baxter
didn't
Street.
even drive. No, it's the one
Yeah.
beyond that, Union Street.
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
No, it's Lincoln.
You see it here? I can't read that.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's Lincoln.
Yeah, it's Lincoln Street.
Okay. Here's, look in the lower
Gotta get the square.
left-hand corner. See that orange dot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the site that I was talking about before.
which
If we
doesn't
had-
exist right now, right?
Which doesn't exist, but it would appear almost intuitively obvious.
It's on
the-
Elm Street, just so people know.
The location of
Elm
that
Street.
to that site might fill in that. So where is the gap? I'm still looking for it, and it hasn't been demonstrated. It has not been demonstrated with evidence that supports it. And I cannot verify the accuracy, because the whole purpose of this is from now on, whenever you see a coverage map, one of these, hopefully on a big board, on a 7.5-minute topographic map, you're going to be able to say, after we overlay these two things, wow, I can believe that. That's true, that's real, because the computer is accurately reflecting what the signal strength is. Very important to have it verified. As Reagan said, trust but verify. This is what we're going to do. We're going to verify this, and then you can trust anything you see from now on. One other thing with respect to this, and I don't know who this outfit is. 1985, a fellow named Y.C. Lee, he's a Pactel guy when we were building the first systems, and we worked a lot on the CTI Advanced Technology Committee. Came up, he was a really smart guy, still is, something called the Lee criteria. The Lee criteria states that when you're doing measurements like this, drive test measurements, you have to make a measurement very, very frequently, so you get over what's known as Rayleigh fading. There's fast fading and there's slow fading. The signals go in and out. And his criteria said you've got to make 47 measurements in 40 lambda. Lambda is the wavelength of the signals that we're at. In this particular, if it's 850, the wavelength is about 13 inches. So if 40 times 13 to make 47, I would then have a measurement about every inch. If I look at this map and look at the dots where the measurements are presented, and look down here in the corner and see the scale, it's about 300 feet between those dots. This map is not acceptable from Lee criteria. It's not a good representation of the actual signal, and I don't know what outfit measured this, but there's an outfit up here in Massachusetts called C-Squared Systems, and they wouldn't do it like this. And I have nothing to do with them, I just see their work all the time. This has got to be straightened out. And one final thing about this. When I read the report, it says, number 6, this is from the engineer. AT&T uses 850 megahertz frequency to provide coverage footprint because the 700, 800 megahertz frequency generally covers a greater geographic area. It's true. Lower frequency, better coverage. And the footprint provided by the higher frequencies. Additionally, AT&T uses the 1900, 2100 megahertz frequency to add capacity to support the network. The 2100 megahertz frequency generally covers a smaller geographic area that provided by the 700, 850. You bet, 100%. I agree with that, 100%. But I heard tonight about a pie. The more people want to use the pie, we've got to have something. That's capacity. When more people are trying to use a cell site and it doesn't have sufficient channels because everyone is trying to download YouTubes, it runs out of capacity. And indeed, that's where they offload the capacity in 1900, 2100, the AWS band and the PCS band. Cellular 850 LTE typically continues to carry voice calls, if this is about voice calls. We think it is. Because of that, when you look at the coverage maps, you have to say, what am I being shown? Do you know what frequency this is?
That was my first question.
I don't. I assume, because most carriers, I've heard hundreds of applications. In fact, I'm hearing 2 applications right now for AT&T. One in Gardner, New York, AT&T wireless edge towers, and one in North Salem, New York, AT&T homeland towers. Just like this, Global Tower, they get a partner, these other guys got a partner. Those are both AT&T applications. They show 850, because that's really the underlying system. So I knew right away, I figured, it doesn't say here, but I figured, okay, that's for 850 coverage. Look at this map. The drive test, look in the lower right-hand corner. GWS scanner, best channel receiver, 1900. It says 1900 coverage. It's not cellular coverage. It means nothing. We got a lot of work to do to get evidence that you can work as a board that I can help you understand and that the applicant can justify his application. And there'd be nothing else that I'd like the applicant to justify his application, because it means that I did my job, they justified it, and then you can make your decision there. So remember, proper terrain maps that show things like Baker Hill, or show where there's a country club and a golf course maybe. And you know, in areas like that, open areas, the signals can be weak. It's when you get into something called a GSA supply depot. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds like.
It's no longer there.
Yeah, it's not there anymore.
It's not there anymore. Okay.
Fancy apartments.
And I see this, how about that WT, is that still there? WT,
No.
water tank.
No.
Oh, that went with the depot. Too bad, that would have been, I love water tanks for cell site antennas. Substation, is that still there? See, that's, unfortunately, this is not an updated
It's not yeah.
7.5, but it still gives you an idea. What the terrain doesn't change unless
Yeah.
the Chinese bulldoze it.
Yep.
It stays the same. So that's important, because then I can see where the terrain is. It also helps us in understanding where the sites are laid out with respect to one another. That's important.
Thank you.
Having coverage maps that depict the signal strengths that we talked about, -75, -85, -95. Drive tests that are done according to the standards of the industry, and we'll just say LEED criteria, that depict the coverage of the coverage that's being predicted. If they want to show us 1900, then drive 1900. If they want to show us 850, then drive 850. Whichever one they'd like to show. You would hope they would show the 850, because you asked that question before, you know, what about Verizon? Well, they got nothing to do with Verizon. Verizon operates a different system. There's no interoperability between AT&T and Verizon. You can't take a Verizon phone and make an AT&T call. Different technology. But you're right, the towers are the same. So if they show their best coverage, then you have an idea of where their weaker coverage might be, and this will help that. So we have verification of the propagation. We have presentation on proper maps. Two important things. We've got the signal levels now defined, and we understand what frequencies are working with. And in a presentable form so that perhaps your audience can see it. More importantly, so you can see it, because you make the decision. And a little bit so I can see it too, because I'm trying to help you with this. The only other thing I'll point out, and it's a curious thing, it's not curious. I asked about an alternate height. You asked that question. How do you know that it's 120 feet, or perhaps it was you? So I asked that question in my letter, my report, and I got this back. If you look at the recent evidence submission, by the way, and the maps got even smaller this time, so that's useless. I'm sorry. Forgive me for saying that, but I can't help you with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here. This. I said.
What does that mean?
Okay. To me, this is what's called a first Fresnel zone clearance map. If you notice, the tower is way over here on the left. I'm looking at it upside down, so it's on my right. See that? And then there's a straight line that goes out to some distance. Now, why it's tilted down, I don't know, because these antennas typically shoot out straight, or maybe they're half a degree tilted. At 120 feet, probably no tilt, maybe a half a degree. That's significant tilt. Then it shows two additional, and those are, that either can be the beam width of the antenna or something else called a Fresnel zone, spelled F-R-E-S-N-E-L. It's French, so you don't say Fresnel, you say Fresnel. And that is a clearance zone that you need to have signals propagated. And you notice how they have it running into these things. I don't know what those things are. I don't know where this data came from. It's not from a USCGS topographic map. It's from something else that I have no idea. And what this is attempting to show, I believe, is that at 120 feet, it hits things. I don't know what those things are. Are those buildings? Are those trees? Are those, I don't know what they are. I have no idea. The way minimum height is demonstrated, and by the way, it's only on one radial. That radial going this way, once again. You can see the radial is the black line there. If there were a presentation like this, it would be done with 360 degrees of radial, so you could see what every radial looked like, where the terrain blockage was. The way an alternate height analysis is done You verify the propagation. You know that it's good from the drive test, so you say, I can believe what I say. What do I say in my report? You run it at 120, then you run it at 100, then you run it at 80, and you see what the coverage looks like at those different heights. You can believe the model, you can believe what they've shown you as far as coverage is concerned, overlay the two together, and then see if there are any significant gaps left over. That's how you determine alternate minimum height analysis. Hasn't been done. Well, this is cute. You know, this is the old thing. If I can see it, I can talk to it. But it's meaningless because we don't know what this is. We don't know what data were used to create this. So I would request, as I said in my report, a minimum alternate height analysis, and that will help you. And one last thing. In the simulations, the photo sims that were done, as I pointed out, the original testimony said it was a lattice tower. But now, you know, did you see that in my report? But I assumed that was just boiler.
Isn't that right?
So it is monopole.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I looked at this, and it's a 4-carrier monopole, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 120 or 117 because they don't go to the top. There's a little space at the top. 117, by industry standard, they space them 10 feet apart. 127,
No.
117,
Right.
107, 97, 87, 77. Okay. Well, the photo sims only shows the one array.
Right.
But let's count down. Look at the one called Hingham MA, what is this? Proposed conditions. Oh, photo location. From 233 Lincoln Street backyard to Chouinard residence. It's in there pretty deep, but the reason I pick it is because the monopole really shows up. So it was just curious to me. If you look at that, you'll see the top arrays at 120. Then you see holes in the monopole.
Yeah.
That's where the cables come out.
Yep.
That's where they get the cables to go out to the antenna. So there's one at 120. What's 10 down? 110. 100.
Right.
90, 80, 70. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I thought it was a 4-carrier pole. So I think you just need explanation because I don't know, number one, we're going to get 6 carriers today. There aren't 6 carriers anymore. 4 carriers, maybe. But is that what you're really going to see? I think you should ask that question.
No, the visual impact of, we probably have 2 or 3 more arrays of antennas, right?
And you should see those, and then when you get to the point of approving this, or when you get to issues that, remember, there's your planner. But I can certainly help your planner on what is technically feasible to do as far as antenna mounts. That's a 12-foot platform with 4 antennas, remote radio heads, and surge arresters up there. A lot of stuff. And that's it typically. There are other ways, if you get to the point, yes, we're going to approve this pole at X feet, are there ways that they can do stuff so that perhaps the visual observation isn't quite as bad? We can talk about that. I can help you technically. She can help you from a, yes, that's a good idea from a planning point of view. That's typically it. So that's pretty much the summation on the report. Quite frankly, I was disappointed. I thought I'd have better stuff to talk about tonight after my report. I wasn't sure, maybe they didn't get it or something. And I don't know. So I hope that's helped you. And if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to try to answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions. In your opinion, based on the data that we've received so far, do we have sufficient data to say that there's a gap in coverage?
You know, in my reports, when I write them, the first one we usually say, I will stipulate that the applicant has demonstrated that there's a significant gap in coverage. I didn't say that this time.
Correct. So do we have sufficient data to make that assessment? No.
I mean, you have submissions.
Right, but
when I talk about purported coverage or lack of coverage, you have submissions, but is it verifiable, demonstratable data that there's a gap in coverage?
Right. And looking at the maps, the ones behind tab 11 or behind tab 12, where there's the the bright colors with the green, blue, yellow, and red.
Existing AT&T without proposed.
Right.
That's
You're right,
11.
right. So looking at that and looking at the other,
What other?
the 11 is one, and then the other would be 12.
Oh, the one.
That's with the proposed.
Right,
That's
right,
with
so,
the
right.
proposed.
But looking at either one of those maps, my assumption would be that there is some sort of variance associated with the data. In other words, I'm assuming that they're reporting average results for what's in the map, but there's probably a plus or minus, that there's a 95% confidence interval, or there are various confidence intervals associated with the data, and that what they're likely reporting is the mean. And I'm wondering if, in fact, the lines wouldn't be as bright as they are. In fact, they'd be blurred and going over from one to the other. If, in fact, we understood what the variance was associated with these numbers.
Indeed. You're now asking something to do with the reliability of what you're seeing.
Yes.
And it's well known, and in publications such as the ETI, ETR 364, the accuracy of propagation maps such as this, the uncertainty, 6 to 10 decibels. So when you see something that says minus 85, it could be minus 91, or it could be minus 75. That's why the drive tests, which I call nearly the gold standard, because you're actually measuring signal strength. They have a 2 dB variation. So when the drive test is telling you that it's minus 85 dBm, it could be minus 87, or it could be minus 83. The good news there is that the phone doesn't know a difference between minus 85 and minus 87, or minus 83. Getting back to your bar analogy, the same number of bars, whatever they were, because of the precision of any of this. You know, there's precision in making measurements, and that's why the verification is so important. So you're right, but look at that again. Notice existing. There's a big sea of green. Remember, green is super. That's up here, and that's
Right.
where you live. You said you lived in the shipyard,
Right.
which is up
Yeah.
to the north here.
They do.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Super signal. Why? Because you got a smokestack there.
Right.
Okay, that chimney, and you can see it in the visuals. I can see the antennas on it.
Okay.
Now, so you look down here. Now, look at the overlay. Did it really change anything due north, northeast?
No.
No. Did it
little bit.
really change anything south, southeast? Yeah, a little bit. Put in some more red. But remember, that's not what we're talking about here. We want to see blue and yellow. So if these were bigger maps, and I know they'll do that, and by the way, most carriers, when they come in, will come in with maps like this. And this is the best part. They'll have a base map like this. They'll lay over a plastic sheet.
Exactly, then we'd see the difference.
It will show
Yeah.
existing coverage. Then they'll lay over another sheet. Now, maybe they'll do this now, you know, I'm an old guy, and so I do that with overlays. But now with what was that, PowerPoint? You can do that with a PowerPoint, so it's an overlay and then it comes over. It's really neat then, because you can say, could you take that back? Put it back. And then when you compare the coverages at 120, 100, 80, 90, whatever they are, you lay those on top of one another, and you can see what percentage of new coverage you're actually getting from this thing. Presentation is so important in this to make it easier for you, for me, and for them, because they want to justify this site. And quite frankly, I wouldn't think they'd want to build a site that they didn't need. You know, I mean, there's no doubt about that. Why would a carrier want to do that? But you've got to make a decision about where it goes. Is this the right location? We don't know.
Could you describe a little bit more about the test that you had asked for while the crane was there, and what it would have shown, and whether or not we should insist on that?
If you go back to this map, on here, you know what, I wrote this. I'm not going to enter this, you know, I just want to show you guys, and then maybe if you want, we can enter, in my report, I'll enter this into the report. This was an application I recently reviewed where drive tests were actually done. Pass that around.
Yeah.
You can see in that, see how all the measurement points the pixels
Yep.
overlap?
Yes.
They're on top of one another. That is a CW drive test. In a CW drive test, on the crane, they hang an antenna on a cable, and there's a test transmitter down at the bottom that transmits a fixed amount of power, 1 watt, let's say. And this antenna has a gain of 3, so it's 3 watts being transmitted. They drive around in a car. The car has got a GPS receiver. It also has a device, a cellular and PCS data receiver that's actually hooked up to a phone. Telephone plugs into it. And it's monitoring this one special frequency. You can't make a call on this frequency. That's why it's called a CW. It's on all the time. There's no information being transmitted on it except for signal strength. So this car drives around, constantly making measurements. It then takes the data, and since it has the GPS location, it then downloads that to a map. That map is about as good as it gets, because it's almost like making a call. I mean, I say that's nearly the gold standard. The gold standard is, can you make a good call, or can you pass good data? But that's pretty darn close. We then take that, compare that, and as you can see in this one, let me set on include that. This was the calculator. Look at that, it's the same scale. So you lay that over there, and you can then verify, look at that, blue was minus 85, green was minus 75. Blue was minus 75, green was blue was minus 85, green was minus 75. You overlay those things, you hold them up to the light, or do them on transparency, wow, that's really good. That's what you need. And that would have been the ideal time. But if you can get good scan data today from their existing system, that's almost as good. I mean, it really is, they missed the opportunity, and it's a tough burden now. If they would give real scan data of their existing system the way it is today, we can then overlay that on their calculators, and that will save them a lot of time and effort. It'll also save you time and effort, but we can still verify what we want. But that's up to you.
I have a question. Right, you have spent, you've done a very good job introducing concepts to us, and one of your major themes is verification. And I've heard from counsel to the applicant that the question of whether or not there is a gap in coverage, I'll put words in the counselor's mouth, is answered by the applicant, not by the board. So we are now, in terms of, you're suggesting that we request additional information that you are saying can be obtained, that it's nothing heroic, it's just getting data so we can verify these tests. The question that we'll ask before we adjourn this evening is, will we get that data? And will we have an opportunity to review it? Because I think what I'm hearing you say is we should be getting that to make an informed judgment on their application. But I've also, I think, said that's not necessarily within the purview of the board. So I'm just trying to understand where we're going to go, because I think more information is better. It'll help educate all of us. We'll understand if there is a gap in coverage. There's a gap in coverage, but it's a sort of thing that there is a lot of science here. I get the sense from you that you can make that science understandable to us, and that we can do a good job, as we're supposed to do under the law, of making a fair determination. So I'm trying to anticipate what our next steps will be and whether or not we'll get the data that we can use to verify what you would like to verify. And I hope we can, but
Part of the problem with that, and there was a little bit of confusion there, I'm not exactly sure, because when you said that, there are lots of records that the switches where all these cell sites are connected to that makes the calls. There's a lot of CDR, call detail records. It's kind of like metadata, but it's different. It doesn't tell you anything about what's on the phone call. It tells you when the call originated. Mm-hmm. It tells you what cell site it originated on. And then it tells you
if a call is lost. Now, it can be lost for a couple of reasons. It was a bad handoff. In other words, when you drove out of the range of one cell site to another cell site, that cell site might have been busy, so it didn't hand off, or there wasn't sufficient signal strength, so it dropped it. That's one reason the call could fail. The call could fail because the battery died in the phone, and that's not a system problem. Or the dog ate the phone. That will also drop the call. And it's true, you don't know, or you stepped on the phone or something else. Or ultimately, there was a problem with the switch. So when you get such call detail records, and in my experience, carriers have not been, the last time it happened was Cranford, New Jersey, T-Mobile application that they finally did release the CDRs. It was this thick. It was, I mean, what a dump of data. It was incredible, and it was almost impossible and meaningless to go through, except you could say, pick one cell site and see what was happening. It would be nice. I'm not sure if it really helps you.
Okay.
The true thing about whether they have a gap in coverage, they will demonstrate with good maps, with good presentations and good drive data. They will demonstrate without a doubt. The CDR would be fun, be nice, but and if you ask for it and they want to give it to you, that's clearly their decision. I said in my experience that it typically, in fact, a lot of carriers don't even like to do scan tests because they say that's proprietary, which is crazy because anyone can drive the system, So I don't think there'll be an issue with that. I hope not.
Right, I mean, I would hope that we would ask for data that we would find usable, but not ask for data that would not be helpful.
Or bury us.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
let's be fair to everyone. The data that we feel would be useful in terms of doing, verifying their work, I think we should ask for that, and I hope we'll receive it. And then that'll allow us to get through this process in the most efficient way, and we'll presumably have conclusions that we can rely on, and we'll make an appropriate decision.
Right. I'm assuming that one of the reasons we need the good maps is that so we can determine if they drew the circle in the right place in terms of where they should be looking to place an additional cell tower.
Well, I think, quite frankly, where their engineering department came up with the search ring, that's one of those things that you don't have a lot of control over. I mean, that's their decision, as you pointed out correctly. You can't design their system for them.
Right.
But I have no idea where it is, and I sure would like to see it, and I'd like to see what other alternatives are in there. I mean, and typically what happens at these hearings, the public knows this area better than anybody, because that's where they live. As I said, I'm from out of town. I don't know anything about this place.
Right.
So when they see a search ring on a map like this, then they say, well, there's a place over there. There's a hill, or there's an old water tank, or there's a high voltage station, or is there something else? Why can't we go there to look for, another site? And that's what comes out in seeing the search ring. And I'd love to see it. It would really be nice because I've heard it mentioned 3 or 4 times tonight. So it must exist. It would be fun. It would be really important to see it.
Okay.
And that'll help you. And that, along with verifiable coverage maps, good drive data, and drive data of the areas where they're saying the gap is. That's the other problem.
Downer Street wasn't driven.
He claims the gap is in an area that we don't know, that I don't know where it is, and I can't tell where it is on the map. That's how you demonstrate the gap.
Okay.
And that's that line that he talked about, that it's the carriers. And that thing in the First Circuit, any of this stuff, I'm typically in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, so I get in the Second Circuit. And all of the decisions down there, that issue of substantial gap has always been like half to a quarter of a mile. There's just one East Fishkill most recently that the board denied it. It was a quarter of a mile gap, and right now they're trying to figure out if that was a big enough gap or not. In your courts, you probably have it. So I'm not going to go there. You will either demonstrate a gap, and you probably will, but let's see it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry I talked so long, but I'm
No,
trying to get you.
No, that's kind of right. And I am looking at the clock here, Joe.
Okay.
I mean, we do have another matter tonight.
Their RF engineer a chance to respond.
Yeah, I think we can do that. I think what I want to do this evening is give your RF engineer a chance to respond. And to the members of the public here, it's getting late. It's getting close to 10 o'clock. I think as a goal, I'd like to wrap this up around 10 or so, because we do have another hearing, believe it or not, that we have to get to this evening. This will be continued, and we will have an opportunity to hear from all of you, so.
Do we want to reserve?
What do we want to reserve?
Do we want to reserve 10 or 15 minutes for the public to
Yeah, I
speak,
think
just
we
so
can give them time.
some members can
I'll-
speak?
I'll
and
follow the consensus.
Not enough time for everyone, but at least to start that process.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can do that. We can do that.
And I think the other thing is that folks always should feel free to write a letter with their concerns, so.
Okay. So if we can have a brief
Yes.
response, or take your time, and
Thank
then
you
we
very
will take a
much.
couple
I
questions.
will, I will do the maps as requested. We will also conduct a drive test of the area and a crane test of the proposal, and we'll provide those maps.
That'd be it. Thank you. That'd be great.
Not a problem.
That would be great, right?
Yeah.
Was
Thank
there
you
a
very
reason that there was not a drive test done on Downer before?
Usually it's directed by the board, what they want. Some towns want a projector, some towns there was no
Okay.
advice to me. to
It just seems odd to me
the
that you're
direction.
asserting a need state, but you didn't drive the area.
Right.
You're asserting that there's a coverage gap in the area that you didn't drive test.
Well, I think we can certainly rectify
Oh,
that.
we
yeah,
provided-
in the future, so.
Yeah.
So we certainly want to see the drive test results
Yes, sir.
on
Yes,
down.
we will do that and
This time.
provide it.
As well as the rest of the year.
And before, when I was going over your qualifications, I cut you off. I didn't know if you would, with any certifications you would wanted to introduce, or?
No.
Was it, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, I would maybe set a deadline on the clock, and
Right.
we'll take some
What do you think?
comments.
Let's say 10 minutes or 5 after 10?
Okay, so let's do
Okay.
until 10:05.
Yeah. I think,
If they have experts who are not going to be here, we should find out.
Well, yeah,
So that we
sure.
can, like, is there, will your
The rest-
sound person, will you be here at the next hearing? Because you haven't had a chance to speak, and,
I expect that I will be
okay,
here.
great, okay.
Do we know a date yet?
Well,
do not.
we're not there yet, but
We do not.
I just don't want to
Before
have
we leave,
people
we will.
disappear
Yeah.
who we may need.
okay, so I think at this point, we want to open it up for some questions for 10 minutes, 5 after 10. And then, if you can, please speak loud enough to hear, or maybe come up to the microphone. We need to have your name and address for the record as well, so, sir.
Yeah, Brett Carr, I'm at 2 Tupelo Drive. Is that a procedural question?
1 second, if you could just go to the
Yeah.
mic. That was the first procedure.
We can hear you, the TV audience might not.
I know,
The
I know.
TV audience
Just
might not.
procedural. When we're listening to these things and we have questions, how do we get those questions presented? Do we wait until the end when you open up like this? Or can we ask the presenter questions about their presentation?
I would say the former. You need to be recognized by the chair, particularly in a large group. You'd be recognized by the chair. We tend to allow the presenters to complete their presentations, and then, so it might be helpful if you bring a pad, write your question down, and we will, as Joe said, tonight we're running late, but we will absolutely make sure that people have opportunities
So
to.
for example, the gentleman that presented this first, when he was finished, we could have raised our hand and asked questions of that, or wait for all the presentations and then come back?
I would say you could sort of raise your hand and ask the chair if it
Right.
would be appropriate. The chair might say, you know what, well, why don't we let something else finish up, and then we'll come back to you. So it'll be depending on how the hearing's going,
Right.
but if you get the chair's attention, and that would be the best way to do it.
But I just want to echo, I think it was Sarah who made the point about writing something down. You don't know how the hearings are going to go, and if there's an important point, and for some reason you don't have an opportunity to speak, if you write it down, get it to the office, we'll make sure it gets into the record.
Absolutely. Sir?
David B., 4 Saraway.
Sorry, it's not us. It's the folks at home, so, yeah.
Forgive me, this is all kind of new to me, but I hadn't heard anything about a distributed antenna system, and I'm just
We'll
wondering
get there.
if that's coming, or if, is that a procedural thing? Or if it would be able to solve any coverage gap, or if it's even possible.
So the answer, under our bylaw, we have to look at a DAS. We'll have to look at the DAS to see to what extent that can address the issue. So that is on our agenda to cover.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
there anyone else? Yeah, sir.
Bob Evans, 92 Glow Drive, I'm the butter. I just want to read very quickly to you a petition that we've had signed by 130 people, 130 residents of Hingham, and the signatures are still coming in, and we'll present this to the board tonight. It's to the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board regarding the petition requesting a denial of the Anchor Plaza cell tower application by Global Tower Assets and New Singular Wireless. We, the undersigned, oppose the installation of a personal wireless services facility, otherwise known as PWSF, specifically cell towers which do not conform to the Town of Hingham bylaws relating to such. We are opposed to the installation of a proposed 120-foot Anchor Plaza cell tower, which would be located 66 feet from a residential property line and 180 feet from the nearest home. We support the Hingham's master goal to safeguard residential neighborhoods from encroachment by all forms of incompatible uses. We believe PWSF should not be located within a proximity to residential neighborhoods such that they may devalue homes, create a safety risk from tower collapse, or create noise and/or visual nuisance. We support the purposes of the bylaws, and I quote, to conserve the value of land and buildings, to encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the town, to allow adequate personal wireless services to be developed while simultaneously preserving the character and appearance of the town by protecting the scenic, historic, environmental, and natural resources of the community by requiring owners of towers and PWSFs to configure them so as to minimize and mitigate the adverse visual impact of the towers and facilities. And that's from the Town of Hingham bylaws. We also support alternative personal wireless service solutions, such as distributed antenna systems, DAS, that is provided for in the zoning bylaws that utilize a least intrusive standard to provide wireless services throughout the Town of Hingham. 130 signatures, and the signatures still coming in. Many of the folks are in this room tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So we look forward to receiving that into the record.
Absolutely. Okay. Is there anyone else? Sir.
Bob Higgins, 11 Bulow Road. I would like the board to ask the applicant if there's any possibility they could upgrade the facility in the shipyard, since they've already said they have facilities there. Is there any opportunity to upgrade that facility? And as opposed to building a tower here, if it can't be done, would they at least address that to the board and to the public? I think it's a viable question, and it's, in my opinion, if it's a business decision, it's one thing, but we're looking at North Hingham here and that shopping area in the last 40 years. There's been over 100% increase in the use of that place. You have to stop at some place, please, okay? I live right, my backyard's on Lincoln Street. I've been watching it for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tony Viola. I live at 8 Tupelo Drive, and my house is about 300 feet away from the proposed site. Just if I could, through the chair, if I could ask the applicant as to whether or not the witnesses will be available, the professionals that you brought here tonight, will they be available for questioning at the next meeting and future meetings? Do we have time to, they will be available, so we could bring the project engineer back up at a later date?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. Ma'am.
Lauren Beebe, 4 Sarah Way, Hingham, Mass. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It means a lot to myself and my family. I grew up 4 Sarah Way, Hingham, Mass, and I currently live in Los Angeles, California. When I first heard that the cell towers were going up behind my parents' homes and this meeting was going on, I jumped on a plane and I came back. So here I am. And the reason that I'm back is because of all of the reasons stated tonight. The noise, the lights on the top of the tower, and everything else that you guys pointed out. I understand that cell phones are important, and we all have them, and they're not going anywhere. But there are major health risks. I mean, like, if I just smoked a cigarette right now, I think that you guys would have a problem with that and ask me to put it out. But if there's a big cell tower behind my house, I just don't think that that is going to help anybody out. And I know that there's, laws about that, and I can't really talk about it, but I don't understand why, because it's really important to me. And my loved ones and my family and my friends that have seen me grow up are all going to be affected if this happens. So I said my piece, and thank you, and Merry Christmas, and Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year's. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Anybody else?
Joe?
Oh.
Stanley Coleman, 5 Buell Road. I just wanted to ask, one of the board members said that they had A&T and they didn't have a coverage problem. I'm just wondering, can anyone from Hingham at this meeting stand up and say that they had a dropped call? Maybe from the Hingham Yacht Club, I'm not sure, given the coverage areas that they were talking about. But I would just like to see one live human being who said, I was driving on, say, Lincoln Street, and my call dropped out, or I was driving on Downer Avenue, or I was driving on Thaxter Street, what have you. I haven't heard a single person say that, and I haven't run into anyone that said that. I realize that's highly unscientific, but at least it would demonstrate that there's an actual problem in addition to the maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sir.
Evening, thanks for a moment. David Wilkinson, 1 Langley Road, not a direct abutter, but close enough that it'll, if it falls wrong, it might land in my yard. Things I'd like to explore, maybe just pay a little bit of attention to. I'm curious, why is this a multi-use application?
It's not a multi-use
Co-location.
application.
Excuse me, co-location.
No, co-location
Why
is
is that?
a co-location is a requirement of the bylaw. We
So-
ask that they look at co-location opportunities. If there are none, that they make their tower available for
Okay, so-
co-location.
We can minimize the number of cell towers in the town.
So if I could ask the applicant, is there any impending additional co-locator?
I believe they testified earlier, no.
So was it just, you applied as a co-location application because our bylaws require that? That?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard in the industry, if I may say so, that new towers be not just for a single applicant. I mean, you don't have to come in with 3, 4 applicants at the same time, but.
Right, and my only point is that I think it's a really good bylaw that you made to do that. And does this circumvent it? Does this just say, sure, we'll do a co-location? And then in the longer term of that, if there is never another co-locator on that, and it's just an AT&T tower, does that put you in the position of giving AT&T a competitive advantage, the town? Because they're trying to do this because they have a competitive disadvantage. So does that, if there is no co-location and the other providers are fine, are we now, as the town, getting in the business of trying to equal the playing field?
To my view, competition doesn't enter into our review. I mean, that's a business matter for the individual cell firms to make their own, they make their own minds up on those issues, so.
Okay, all right. Just kind of out of curiosity.
But I think what you're asking, is it possible that this could be the only applicant, the only, use on this tower? Sure.
Yeah.
I guess that's possible.
Yeah.
But in the future, if other carriers determine that they have a gap of coverage in this area that could be served by co-locating on that tower, that's what we would require them to do.
But it would probably have to be 120 feet, right? So they wouldn't be able to
Well,
use.
We'll see.
They would then have to make the case that that available tower space does not work for them and they need to do a new tower. And that would be presumably a more costly solution and a more difficult bar to get over in terms of this board.
But the applicant is the one that makes the decision whether or not there's a gap and whether or not it has to be a certain tower location.
They make the demonstration that there's a gap, yeah.
Right. So that seems like, wouldn't be that hard.
Right.
So I'm just saying, this is going down the road of lots of towers. So you should pay attention now.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Viola? Sure. One more.
I hate to jump back up again, but I have a couple more questions. I produced a map, and I'd like to show the applicant the map and give a couple copies to the chair.
Okay, if we could, we've got a few minutes here, so.
This essentially is a map of the Crow Point area, the Otis Hill area, the shipyard, and it shows in the center the planned monopole, which is at the Lincoln Street property, the smokestack on the shipyard to our left. And in the application, it is written that the gap in coverage that they experience runs along Downer Avenue. And we can trace that, can't we go? There's a red line that runs from Lincoln Street down Downer Avenue, east of Bradley Woods Drive, and that's in parentheses. And on the left-hand side, we've marked a red line where Bradley Woods Drive exists. And it says, to the east of Broad Cove Road and the surrounding area. Now, if you look at Broad Cove Road, and again, I'm not a geography buff, but if you look at Broad Cove Road, it seems to run from the east to the west or the west to the east, depending on how you look at it. So it would seem to me that part of the gap in coverage is out in the Hingham Harbor. Is that true? Shane, I don't understand where this was coming from. This is supposed to be a professional organization, AT&T, a billion-dollar company, and they can't get one word straight on an application. This is supposed to be east of Broad Cove Road. We, as lay people, do not understand this. We're trying to do our own coverage, our own testing. We can't disseminate what you mean by east of Broad Cove Road.
Okay.
That's all we're looking for.
Okay. We hear that, thank you. Okay, it's a little bit past 5 after 10, so I'm gonna...
Stamp this.
Yeah, we're gonna stamp that, thank you. I guess we need to look at some dates to continue this. So, obviously, we're gonna wait until after January 1st here, so...
Mr. Chairman, how about Tuesday, January 21st? I think that's been a proposed date.
I believe that was an earlier proposed date.
Yeah.
It is acceptable.
It is acceptable to you?
SCB?
Tuesday, the 21st.
Yeah, that's,
When?
What else?
Pardon?
SCB, we've got a 40B hearing.
Yeah, we've got the 40B hearing.
SEO was not available on the 23rd, which we also looked at, and the applicant is not available on the 27th, which was another potential date. So it's doing 2 tough meetings.
Are they the only two things that night?
They're the only 2 things, yeah.
And that's the only meeting we have that week?
Only meeting that week. I guess we can slog
So
through
we're
it,
talking
so-
about starting maybe one at 7 and the other at 9?
Well, so you already did the SCB to 7:30, but you can change that potentially
Right.
on the January 8th.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do that.
So you could do this one whenever, you can do this earlier or later. Those guys would prefer earlier, planning board.
Yeah.
So move SCB to 7 and then do this?
No,
at-
no, no, no.
Move SCB to like 8.
Oh, to 8,
8:30.
and do this at 7?
And do this at 7 or earlier.
7 to 8.
sorry, what date are you talking about?
can't hear what you're saying.
Excuse us, folks, excuse us, we're trying to get this date settled down if you could. Thanks.
So the 21st, Tuesday, but we're talking about time now.
Oh, okay.
Assumed that you guys would prefer earlier.
Sure.
Would before 7 work at all, or are folks having a hard time getting back?
It'd be tough for me to get before 7.
6:45.
6:45, yeah?
Have the SCB hearing that same night, so.
Great. So we have a 40B hearing that night.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
So we got to figure out if we want to move it before or after this.
Oh, could you move them after this?
So you prefer to do it before? I think we should, if we can move SCB to start at 8:30.
Yeah, that's.
Yep.
And then have these guys to start at 7.
7?
7 o'clock. That's great, thank you.
Okay.
I do want to put one thing in the record. To counsel for the applicant, you're going to need an A3. You're going to need to apply for an A3 special permit. So you can work with our Director of Community Planning, but I really think you need to apply for one, all right? And do we want to get a continuance in writing, or are we good with time?
No, we're good with this.
We're good with time.
So can you say out loud the date and time, please?
Right,
The planning board will need a written request for
Yeah.
extension, and if we're not included in that,
Yes.
write it tonight and hand it to me.
You can do it handwritten. So you would request a continuance to January 21st at 7 o'clock. Okay.
Right.
You can do it right now.
But in terms of the planning board deadlines for issuing a decision, the local rule would otherwise have a decision earlier than the federal shot clock. We're pushing it back so it's all the same deadlines, so that we're not fighting multiple.
Are we covered by this?
Yes.
Are you sure? We usually get a separate one.
Well,
for
then
the
you can
board.
certainly get your,
Yeah.
why don't you?
I'm going to do that.
Correct.
Just for the
Okay.
record.
Yep.
Okay.
And counsel, you can just write it out right now. Address one of the planning board, one of the ZBA, just for the record to make sure everything's square. But
Okay.
thank you.
That's fine.
You're probably right, Joe.
We
but-
So
chose
just
7
so-
o'clock?
Yes.
7 o'clock. So just so everyone knows, we're going to continue this hearing on Tuesday, January 21st at 7 PM, okay? All right?
Okay.
Chairman,
No, we're,
Thank you.
public comment.
Yeah, I think we're recessed for the evening,
No,
but
we're not.
All I wanted to ask is, based on the discussions that took place tonight, in your opinion, do you say the application is complete and is the shot clock running? Or is the application incomplete and is the shot clock off?
Two points. First, we agreed at the beginning of the meeting, whether or not the application was complete or not, we know the baseline, so that if the shot clock was running, the date was going to be March 31st. Okay. You're asking whether or not the shot clock has even started, if the application is complete. This board, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, we agree.
Right, and the applicant agreed to that March 31st date. But you're right, that only triggers if the application is complete. I don't think the board has made an assessment on the completion or the completeness of the application.
Within 30 days, so, or else the clock starts ticking
Right.
on the
So,
shot clock. So
okay.
if we didn't notify them within 30 days that their application
Right.
was complete, then it's.
Well,
running. And so John Chesia's email or
Right.
report included, was submitted within 30 days, has a number of missing items.
Okay.
But I think they spoke more to the adequacy of the application than the paperwork required to, to be submitted.
Right.
So I believe the clock is ticking. I believe these guys are going to cooperate
Right.
in granting
Correct.
extensions if they
Is
continue
it-
to not be able to
Is
submit
it
in a timely manner,
administratively
request the
complete?
materials.
Technically complete.
Right, and, yeah,
The purpose of the shot clock, as you know, is when boards fail to act
right.
or not.
Correct.
Or they don't even meet sometimes, yeah.
Or they don't even.
Right.
And I think in this instance, we're agreeing to dates and we're agreeing to a time at
Correct.
the end and agreeing for flexibility. And I think that's the best that both of us can ask for.
Right. One of the criteria that we will use in our decision is whether or not, in fact, they've given the board the data that's required. And I don't think they will want a denial, which a court would uphold because of insufficient data. So, to the extent that we've identified areas that need further support, and they don't have that support to give us, I would expect they'd be asking for an extension. Because it's clear to me that there are areas that we clearly need some support on. But I appreciate you raising that.
And I guess
Good
before you go,
question, actually. Very
we're in
good
agreement
question.
on what additional information we're requesting?
Yes, I think it would be helpful, maybe we can chat with Emily.
I'm just going to say that we could probably get that
Right.
pulled together sometime this
We
week
can follow
or
up and then perhaps we
early
can
next week.
follow up with regards to maybe procedurally for the presentation. So
Right.
that
Correct.
we all know,
Right.
how it should go so that
Right.
it's efficient.
Right.
One of the things that I'd like to request, and this board typically requests, is that you provide us the information at least a week before the hearing.
Correct.
If we
Please.
get it the night of the hearing, it's not going to be any good. The public doesn't have a chance to review it. We don't have a chance to review it, and we wind up having to continue it again. So please,
We could, with all due respect to that request.
Right.
We couldn't agree more, and we had talked actually about maybe even, are we ready for even tonight, because we were waiting for
Right.
the updated ASA, we were waiting for the photo simulations. We, just were hot off the press and printed.
right.
you know,
So
within
we,
the last 24 hours.
okay, but we've set a tentative, not a tentative, we've set a date for the next meeting. If, as it approaches, for some reason, you're not going to be prepared, please let us know, and we'll just arrange for further continuances. I don't think we want to have a meeting where, again, we're getting things at last minute.
Okay.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And if I could ask your indulgence, folks, we have another hearing, so thank you.
So
Thanks, Amy.
planning board, is that okay okay to have MATC come in on the 27th to discuss follow-up after their...
That's Monday, the 27th?
That's the Monday, the 27th.
Sure.
Yes.
And they'd like to...
That's the same time as this?
No, this is the
No, it's
21st.
next week. 21st. This was in your packet. They'd like to either have
I
the
could do
whole
it after
night
we
or
finish our
have
next
two
hearing.
Give them the whole night.
We're over an hour
They've been doing
late
everything in
starting.
2 hours. It's been very
I get
well
it.
done.
I
So
get
7 to 9, they've stopped right at 9.
And then if you have like some minutes or something at the end.
They've been keeping it right on schedule, which has been good, so I think 7 to 9 would be perfect.
Okay.
Nobody don't make that the only thing on that night.
I think it's an important enough discussion.
It is, yeah.
Thank you. What happened? We started the hearing.
All right, let me request stuff, so Dick,
Yeah, yeah.
are you gonna come up?
Just your voice.
Sure. Well, we began the public hearing on the application for the cell. Or the hearing before the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals on the application of Michael and Ann Tompkins for a special permit A2 under section 3A, paragraph 4.14A, with site plan review to be done by the planning board under section IG and II, along with the special permit A3 parking determination under section 5A. That should be 1G and 1I, sorry. Under 5A of the zoning bylaw, and other relief is necessary to maintain a storage trailer to the rear of the building at 194 Lincoln Street in Business District B.
This meeting of the planning board is now open for the matter of Michael and Ann Tompkins, 194 Lincoln Street, for site plan review in connection with the special permit A2, special permit A3 parking determination under section B-A of the zoning bylaw to maintain a storage trailer.
Okay, so we know it's been there for a while. We got decisions with my name on them going back to 1993 here, okay? Where you been? How you been?
Suggestion that they might think of is, I never noticed.
When they're expired, we did not realize
Okay,
that it was expiring.
okay. Well, I think that provision's been in the bylaws since at least 93, and I think it's been an annual renewal since then, so, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. You're here, so. You guys want to do your site plan review?
They should go to the microphone if they're going to speak, just for the record, just so you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's working for the TV camera, even if it's not working for people in the audience.
So we've got the existing storage trailer, it's been there for a while, and we're proposing to keep it there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And, again, you're still keeping it for the electrical materials for your work. Well, I don't think we've ever had an issue with this one in terms of its location, its use. It's well screened, and no one hardly knows it's there if they can see it at all. don't know if you guys have site plan issues you want to talk about, and then
Does
we'll
anybody
go
have any
through the special
questions?
permit.
On the trailer?
Okay. It seems as though you've been before the boards before on the same issue where you forgot to renew the permit? Or am I mistaken on that?
We renewed it once. I think we got a notification, we renewed it.
Right.
And then we completely forgot about it.
All right, so going forward, who is the burden on to renew the permit if it's issued?
Both of us. How long is the permit good for? Is it a yearly thing? Is it-
I believe it is an annual
It's
renewal.
an annual renewal
Every year.
So we'll make sure
Every
in
year.
December or whenever it's granted, that we will make sure that it's renewed
Right.
on time.
Yeah. It's business B on an annual basis. Yep. So. Any site plan issues you guys want to talk about? or-
Any questions from the board on the application? And I just wanted to kind of do a straw poll. Do we want to do a full site plan review here? Or how do we want to proceed?
Well, I could make a motion that we waive site plan review and then we could discuss it.
I would second that motion.
Okay.
How did Dick and Sarah feel about that?
I mean, I prefer to go through site plan, piece by piece. I don't know, I don't know what this trailer, I mean, I see there are people here, so I'd like to know if anybody from the audience has anything they'd like to say, because that would help, if anybody has any issues, because I don't know what the issues would be, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are there any abutters that would like to express any concern about the application or any support for the application? And if you could just identify yourself with the microphone.
Jeff Anderson at 190 Lincoln Street. We're kind of a direct abutter, so the trailer's been kind of out of everybody's sight except for us. And it hasn't been an issue. I want to be a good neighbor and everything. It's not the most aesthetic thing where our business is overlooking the trailer with some of the windows itself, and I'm sure that's not an issue for anybody else in town. But it'd be nice if it was, I try to keep arborvitae up covering the trailer itself, and it'd be nice if there was some lattice on the trailer. At one point there was, and the lattice is down where the vines will grow up on it, and it will be somewhat camouflaged. So that's our only concern. I want to be a good neighbor, but at the same time, I want it to be aesthetic as aesthetic as possible for my business.
Okay, thank you for that.
Well, in the letter dated, the renewal of June 11, 1996 talks about that Mr. Tompkins agreed to add a couple additional sections of lattice to make it easier for the ivy to train at the side. Existing arborvitae trees screen much of the trailer from view. And if the ivy planting takes hold, the desired final result should be achieved. So what's the screening of it look like right now? I guess we should have gone out there to look.
There's one section of it, there's one section,
Just identify yourself for the record.
Mike Tompkins, I'm the owner of the property,
Thank you.
and the lattice work is starting to come down, weighted down by, storms with snow, ice, and things like that. And I need to replace a couple of sections of it, and I plan to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so if we were to make that a condition as part of our site plan review, folks certainly wouldn't have any problem with that? No. Okay. All right. Any other questions or concerns? Or if you want to go through site plan review, I think we should do that. If we want to waive, we want to waive. Do you want to go through piece by piece?
I don't know, it seems like those conditions seem like the most important ones, so I'm okay waiving it.
All right, then.
Dick, what do you want to waive site plan, or?
I have a question, and that is, why is this permit being renewed every year? Is that necessary? Is there a purpose to it?
It may just be a requirement of the bylaw, Dick.
It's in the bylaw.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's a.
Yeah.
It,
That's right. the Stop
Right,
and Shop.
yeah, yep. It's in the table of use.
yeah.
Okay, all right, then, actually, we're gonna have you vote on the A3, but on the site plan review, legally you can't, but that was a great question. So, to Judy and Sarah, what I would do is I would make a motion that we waive site plan review for 194 Lincoln Street contingent upon the fact that the applicant has agreed to refurnish the lattice on the side of the trailer. Would anybody like to add anything else?
Yeah,
Well,
and
some
get the
kind of-
arborvitae
Yeah, or some kind of-
plantings back up and keep an eye on them.
Some kind of date, some kind of timing. I know it's the middle of winter right now, so it won't work, but there should be some assurance that, that this is done by a certain time and to a certain specification.
Would March be a good date, in terms of spring, you think, or?
Well, you're gonna put in new lattice. Are you planting arborvitae also, or is the arborvitae
No.
in?
The growth is there, and the ivy is still there.
Yeah.
It's just it got heavy, and with all the snow and ice on it, the lattice came down.
So you should be able to repair it so that the screening is full.
When I put the lattice up, I can tie the ivy
Back onto it, yep. Okay.
So
It was a grapevine.
could you do that by, the end of April?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to do it when we don't have these ice storms.
Right.
It's supposed to get warm this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Be 50 on the weekends.
So to clarify, is that screening the view from the commercial property to the west?
Mr. Anderson, as you say,
Right,
you're
yeah.
on the west?
Dr. Anderson, yeah.
Dr. Anderson, sorry.
It's to the east.
Yeah, his property is to the east of your property, correct, right. The course, right. Dr. Anderson is to the west.
Okay.
That was the previous condition, just so you see.
To the west.
Would the applicant be able to advise the board when that work has been done, so we can just inspect for the record, so when they come back next year, the board will be aware of that?
Yes, I can let you know. Soon we get it done.
Okay, so then I would revise my motion that we waive site plan review for 194 Lincoln Street with the following condition: that the applicant agree to screen the eastern and northern sides of the trailer from the view of the abutting commercial property to the west and to the north along Lincoln Street. This screening will be done no later than April 1st, 2014, or sooner. It will be reported by the applicant to the Community Planning Department for inspection. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Unanimous.
So having heard that, guys, I guess we need to review the criteria for the granting of the special permit A2. I was just going back through the record here on site, and some of the findings the board made way back in the 90s, I think, are still valid here. Particularly, use of the site is in harmony with general purpose and intent of the bylaw. It's a commercial area. You need the trailer because there's no storage in the building, right?
One of the things going from the 93 to the 96, there was a requirement in 96 that the trailer be immediately moved back 3
Correct,
feet.
correct.
Did that happen?
That's in the 98.
Oh, the 98.
Decision addresses that.
Oh, there's the 98, okay, sorry.
MJ Schultz visited back in
Okay.
98 and confirmed that it had been.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
And she confirmed that the ladders have been attached to the eastern side?
Right, yep.
Right.
Okay. The proposed use complies with the purposes and standards of the relevant specific sections of this bylaw. I mean, it's allowed under the bylaw and needs to be renewed on an annual basis. As we've heard, it will be. Specific site is appropriate location for such use, structure, or condition, and compatible with the characteristics of the surrounding area. And as long as it's screened, as we talked about, I think we've met that finding. The use is developed or operated will create positive impacts or potential adverse impacts will be mitigated. Again, that goes to the screening, so we can't see that. There will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. I don't really think that applies here. Adequate and appropriate facilities exist or will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. Doesn't really apply, but the storage trailer does help the site. The proposal meets accepted standards and criteria for the functional design of facility structures, stormwater management, et cetera. I don't think that applies here. It's a trailer, so I think we can grant the special permit.
So I move that we renew the special permit for 1 year and that we incorporate the site plan conditions. Yep.
Just a point of order, we still need to do an A3.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm sorry. I thought
right.
you-
So, but we can do that
Sure,
afterwards.
okay.
We can do that.
So we will
Right,
incorporate the planning board's decision this evening
on the site plan review.
of the site plan. Great. Todd?
There's a motion on the floor.
I'll second that motion.
Second, all in favor? Aye. So renewable 1 year from the date on the permit when we issue. Okay.
Very good.
All right, and the last issue is to address an application for special permit A3 parking determination under section V-A of the zoning bylaw, and this is for the purpose of maintaining the storage trailer that we've discussed. Any questions for the board on this issue?
I mean, I guess we should know that the parking is sufficient in those zones.
Could you explain to the board the adequacy of the parking on the site? I have not heard that there's a shortage of parking, but perhaps you could help the board understand the mixed uses and how much parking you have.
We don't have any problem with, we always have extra space there.
And the trailer does not occupy any parking space. It's in back of the building, way over to the left where you couldn't park a car in there.
Okay. Then, taking the applicant as testified to, I would actively, sorry, do you have a question, Dick? Go ahead. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay, then I would move that we act favorably on special permit A3 parking determination as requested by the applicant. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So,
Thank you very
more,
much.
great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to ask a
Happy
question.
holidays.
I'm sorry it took so long to get to you.
That was an important issue that was up.
So.
Yeah,
All right, good luck, folks.
yeah, that's right.
So we'll have that permit on our
Just remember-
Christmas list going
Yeah,
forward, right?
just remember, right after Thanksgiving, you've got to renew your permit, right after Thanksgiving. The busiest time of the year, right between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Calendar.
Very good, thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Oh, thank you.
Don't know.
Thank you, too.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Check in, verify nothing's changed, so.
We don't have to have a hearing each year.
No.
No, they just come into the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't even have to come before, well, I don't know what the right procedure is.
I mean, suppose if it's a renewal, if it's a permit that expires after a year.
Do you gentlemen have an issue?
Oh,
You're all set?
done.
All done. Well, yeah, but it's good favorably for you, so you're all set. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Thought you could.
We
Did you
did it.
go through this whole thing, the whole hearing?
Did you sit through the cell
We
tower?
hope you learned something.
It's a little bit easier for you guys.